Under the strict surveillance of the female official, the banished cleaner left the backstage dejectedly, returning to the guest area at the front of the hall where the seats reserved for the Northern Kingdom's delegation were located. Princess Melisande. Seeing the cleaner emerge from backstage, the Northern Kingdom's foreign minister finally let out a long-held sigh of relief that had been weighing heavily on him. He hastily got up to greet her and, after guiding her to a prominent position on the teak bench at the front, the foreign minister, seated in the second row, couldn't help but lean over and whisper, "Your Highness, what were you planning to do backstage? Did His Majesty the King assign you any other tasks?" "Heavens, no." The cleaner, in a less than delightful mood, couldn't help but glare at him before replying. "I just went to meet a familiar face and had some casual conversations. Nothing to do with my brother, let alone any secret mission." "Oh." With a voice full of disappointment, the Northern Kingdom's foreign minister pondered for a moment and then took the initiative to report. "Your Highness, during your time backstage, I temporarily substituted for you and reached agreements with 3 kingdoms. When we return today, I will draft the agreements, and at that time, I will need you to sign and seal them. Much appreciated. It's fortunate to have you here." "Ha. You flatter me." Sitting in the second row, unable to see the expression on the cleaner's face, the Northern Kingdom's finance minister continued cheerfully reporting. "Your Highness, besides the 3 current kingdoms, we also reached some verbal agreements with prominent figures from 4 other kingdoms. These agreements are of a slightly lesser degree and do not require your signature for the moment, but you should probably be informed to facilitate when, after the wedding at the private banquet, everyone joins forces to pressure and challenge Princess Veronica to hand over the inheritance of the Kralik kingdom." Although rather displeased with the princess's pettiness, the cleaner, finding her own maneuvering for a coup rather unsightly, discouraged further discussion on these petty schemes, stating, "Let's leave it there for now. We'll talk about the rest when we return. The wedding has started." "Ah, okay." Even though the foreign minister was still somewhat eager to discuss his significant achievements, the organ under the hall's music wall had already begun to play, and the wedding officiant started delivering the opening speech, so he had to stop and turn his gaze to the main stage in the center of the hall. Since this event was not only to hold the princess's wedding but also the future queen's succession ceremony, the number of guests present was exceedingly exorbitant, and thus the main venue for hosting the ceremony was naturally the largest hall in the entire royal capital. This hall, with over 300 years of history, was entirely constructed from pure black stone, with an extremely spacious inner space. The pointed arched dome of the main hall rose to more than 30 meters, with the interior walls of the dome covered in exquisite carvings and intricate patterns. The blazing midday sun, through the more colorful stained glass in those embellishments of the dome, transformed into dazzling beams of light, cascading down in torrents that seemed to be grasped by an invisible hand and cast onto the hall's white marble floor. The floor tiles, polished to a mirror-like sheen, scattered this brilliance once more, illuminating the hall, which appeared slightly gloomy in the daytime, lighting up rows of ancient wooden benches, a red carpet laid all the way from the entrance to the main stage, and a simple white wedding dress trailing along that red carpet. So beautiful, watching the princess, led by a somewhat unfamiliar elder, gracefully walk toward him along the red carpet, Leon on the main stage found himself momentarily dazed. Though the princess was usually known as the most beautiful woman in the royal capital, with a flawless figure, looks, and demeanor, this usual unarguable perfection seemed a bit plain compared to her appearance in her wedding dress now. The intricately designed, tailor-made lavish wedding dress was incredibly exquisite, with petal-like patterns hand-embroidered on the hem of the skirt and the lace-adorned edges delicately entwined around the skirt's lower hem, softly embracing her figure like flower petals. The design above abruptly narrowed, sweeping over her mesmerizingly slender waist, clinging to her already curvaceous lines, elegantly and clearly outlining astonishing contours, showcasing the princess's incredible feminine allure with restraint and ease. When Leon's enchanting gaze moved from the intricate and beautiful rose embroidery on Princess Veronica's chest and along the leaf patterns extending to her neck and shoulders, it finally landed on that beautiful face blushing with a hint of scarlet. The previously noisy world around seemed to instantly become quiet. The face, tense yet brimming with joy, gazing expectantly and shyly, and the dimples barely forming on her cheeks despite biting her lip. Just one glance struck Leon's heart intensely, robbing him of all his ability to think. Although it was only an extremely brief moment, Leon now felt utterly convinced that, in this brief moment, the entire world had disappeared, leaving only that beautiful figure walking toward him. SK. Pathetic male human. Through the mirror surface of Leon's cufflinks, observing the situation outside, the black goat tied up by 4 separate tethers couldn't help but spit out disdainfully. Can't even handle one glance? Trash. With him in this state of being so captivated by beauty, I could knock him over with a single but. If there's a chance, I must advise him to be like me. Just go and have a blast. SK. Forget friends at the sight of a pretty woman. Sitting on the first row bench, watching Leon, whose eyes were filled with the princess on the main stage, the cleaner couldn't help but fold her arms, pulling a face while internally spitting disdain. What's so great about her? Just being a little prettier, a bit more elegant and mature, with a slightly more graceful figure, having a bust 1,000,000,000 times bigger than others? Can't even tear your eyes away? Disgraceful. Amidst genuine disdain from a person and a goat, and a gaze of shock and anger from some armored old man, Leon on the main stage, contrary to the flow of events, moved forward 2 steps unconsciously and stretched his hand proactively toward Princess Veronica. Aren't you two at least going to respect the process I set? Watching the princess initially pause slightly before smiling like a blooming flower and extending her arm to hold onto Leon's hand, the armored old man felt his blood pressure surge from 180 towards 200 in a frenzy. The couple, bypassing the rites of stepping and joining hands, questioning from elders, royal blessings, praise and hymns, all the steps I painstakingly arranged got skipped. That counts at least 15 missed segments. Damn it. By doing this, aren't you? Stop it. That can't be done. Seeing the couple speak a few words face to face and then smilingly extend their hands toward the ring bearer, seemingly ready to ask for the wedding rings directly, the armored old man immediately paled, sprinting furiously towards the main stage. Wait! As if regaining lost youth, the old man sprinted urgently after tossing aside his cane, managing to reach and prevent the couple from skipping more steps just in time, and then immensely satisfied collapsed, performing a pretend death scene with a smiling face. What are you trying to do? After catching an elderly man in armor who was falling, and seeing his soul slowly detach from his body, Leon was left speechless. This old man was of a generation higher than Veronica's father, probably nearing 100 years old this year, yet he still seemed lively before eating, sleeping, running, and chatting without issue. His voice was strong when commanding people from the department, not at all like someone ready to leave this world. But now, Leon, Princess Veronica, equally startled, leaned over and looked at the smiling elder now on his way to the afterlife, asking uneasily, Is he? No. He's fine. Shaking his head quickly, Leon noticed guests in the hall beginning to whisper. Not wanting to interrupt the wedding, he decisively used the authority of the 3-headed canine deity and firmly grasped the hovering soul of the armored old man. The old man's soul, now captured, opened his eyes with a baffled expression. Am I? You are floating, literally floating. We need to sort that out. Leon forcefully pushed the elder's soul back into his body and slapped the old man's face twice, roughing up his philtrum until he finally woke up. I was... Did I just say that? No, you must be mistaken. Using his authority as the gatekeeper of the gate of the deceased, Leon denied entry to the armored old man's soul, temporarily severing the realm of the dead's call to him. He then pulled the bewildered old man up and handed him over to 2 rushing guards. The head of the funeral department fell and hit himself. Immediately take him to see a doctor, and give him any life-saving supplements as soon as possible. Not the funeral department, it's the guest department. Angered by Leon's slip of the tongue, the armored old man glared and protested energetically. And I'm fine now, I don't need a doctor at all. Wait, was I dead just now? I think I saw. Carry him away. He's injured his brain, and he's already talking nonsense. Remember, after seeing the doctor, give him as many life-supporting supplements as you can. Leon plucked a flower from the side, stuffed it into the old man's mouth to block the rest of his words, and signaled to the guards to quickly take him away. He then gave a look to the bewildered MC on stage. Huh? Oh. The MC snapped back to reality after being glared at by Leon and quickly broke out into a bright smile. Minister has watched Princess Veronica grow up, always lamenting that due to his age, he might not live to see the princess marry. It's a surprise that today he not only fulfilled his wish but could personally host the princess's wedding, causing him to be overly excited for a moment. Please forgive him. After awkwardly making up an excuse, the MC recalled his responsibility and eased the tense atmosphere on site. Meanwhile, Leon, forcing a comeback and salvaging his own wedding, wiped the sweat off his forehead and turned to Princess Veronica, comforting her. Don't worry, everything is okay now. Veronica hesitated before nodding, pursing her lips and softly asking, Leon, just now, did his soul float out? ? Leon was slightly taken aback by Princess Veronica's question and asked in surprise, You saw it? You could see his soul? I'm not sure. Reflecting on what she saw earlier, Princess Veronica uncertainly replied, When he fell, I really saw another him floating out from his body and asking you something. Then you pushed the floating him back into his body. So she really did see it. Upon hearing Princess Veronica's description, Leon's eyebrows lifted slightly, and he had some vague guesses. Souls are invisible to most people, and even many level 2 and 3 cleaners cannot directly observe souls. They only sense a vague mass, knowing something is there. According to the director, only those with a contamination value exceeding the minimum for a level 1 cleaner can clearly observe a soul's appearance. Or if someone like Emma and himself who have physically entered the realm of the dead and witnessed the deceased with their own eyes can gain the ability to see souls. Princess Veronica definitely hasn't been to the realm of the dead, yet she not only saw the soul but identified it as the armored old man's soul, which likely surpasses a regular level 1 cleaner standard. So, she might have awakened an anomaly, and likely with considerable strength. Leon looked at Princess Veronica with delight and touched the horn emerging from his cuff, using the soul vision of the black goat to observe Princess Veronica's soul. Sure enough, compared to last time, her soul had undergone a significant transformation. Despite being obscured by her body, Princess Veronica's unique and brilliant soul continued to emit a special oscillation, carrying the distinctive chaotic flavor of a wild, abnormal object holder who hasn't yet sorted out their anomaly. On second thought, even though she doesn't directly hold an abnormal object, she's had quite a few interactions. Being ambushed by rebels and forgotten, watching a play with the drama king that captured her, replaced by the iron-skinned princess of the Slaughter King Association, ambushed alongside me by the Aquarius director, poured an entire king of nightmares into her within the dream realm, and hung overnight by the director's hair. Reflecting on Princess Veronica's past experiences, Leon's eyes lit up with understanding. Logically, after contact with so many things, the accumulation of high-intensity contamination value would leave even a mere ordinary person with 3 to 5 points at least. Moreover, the 12 royal family's talents are inherently excellent. In the 6 elements necessary for the birth of an abnormal object, her soul and body, emotions and personality are already fully aligned, lacking only the anomalous past experience or the anomalous future. Now, after forging a marriage contract with me, it probably equates to having an anomalous future, completing the last piece of the puzzle for birthing an anomaly, making it a natural occurrence, and seems quite a bit stronger than me. Gazing at Princess Veronica after her transformation, with a soul fluctuating more intensely than his own, Leon couldn't help but cast a slightly envious glance at her. Although past accumulations were ample, she had just awakened not long ago. Yet she already surpassed the strength of a typical level 1 cleaner. The talents of the 12 royal families are truly extraordinary. Leon. Watching Leon, who took a moment to ponder and then began looking at her with a peculiar expression, Princess Veronica couldn't help but ask worriedly, What I saw, was it really a soul? Will such a thing cause? This is a good thing. Don't worry. Leon, finally understanding the reason, smiled and gave a glance to the ceremony officer, hinting at him to delay time for a bit, then pulled Princess Veronica a few steps toward the backstage, temporarily avoiding the gaze of the guests below stage, and gently explained. Simply put, even though you haven't joined the cleanup bureau, you've already awakened an abnormal ability or possess your unique abnormal object. I possess an abnormal ability? Princess Veronica was slightly taken aback upon hearing this, and then couldn't help but curiously ask. So what is my ability? Can I see the soul leaving the body of others? No, that is just an accompanying ability. Leon slightly shook his head and then briefly explained a few related pieces of knowledge about abnormal objects. Then asked, Veronica, the abnormal ability I awakened back then happens to be detecting other people's abnormal objects through contact. Do you mind if I take a look? Of course, I don't mind. Princess Veronica shook her head upon hearing this, then gazed softly into Leon's eyes and said, What's mine is yours. I certainly won't hide anything you want to know. Looking into the princess's eyes, as clear as a lake, soft enough to draw someone in, Leon couldn't help but nod involuntarily, then removed the glove from his right hand, lightly placing it on her arm, and a familiar noise immediately sounded in his ears. Bizitzid. Name. Blessings in disguise. Fate. Appearance. No physical entity, held by a beautiful human woman with a graceful figure, who seldom goes out and resides in the palace of Kingdom of Lutang year-round, almost daily wearing custom sleepwear, working in her chamber late into the night. Ability. Blessings in disguise. Cost. Blessings in disguise. File. Princess Veronica Robian of Kingdom of Lutang awakened a special abnormal object upon holding hands with her husband Leon Lane, with only one activation record so far, nearly causing the Minister of Ceremony of the Kingdom of Lutang to pass away prematurely. Evaluation. A peculiar arrogance thinking she ought to bear everything, a resolute commitment to fulfill royal duties throughout her life, and a deep yearning for a beautiful future together fostered this extremely special abnormal object. With the help of this abnormal object, she can sort through complexities and make the most correct decisions in any dangerous situation. But as the cost for peeking into the trajectory of fate, she will encounter overwhelmingly great resistance. Thus, blessings in disguise. Contamination value 0.1. The thing you awakened is potentially a bit outrageous, isn't it? Staring at the overly abstract ability description of blessings in disguise several times, particularly mulling over the file section repeatedly, Leon couldn't help but hiss as he finally understood the cause and effect of the old man's passing event. Previously, when Veronica came down the red carpet, he willingly stepped forward and held her hand, completely embracing the marriage from his heart, fulfilling the future condition needed for awakening an abnormality, leading to her successful awakening of blessings in disguise. Then, he proposed skipping the tedious processes set by the armored old man, suggesting they exchange rings early, prompting Veronica to unconsciously activate blessings in disguise, and made the correct decision to skip the process. But before this blessing was fulfilled, as the cost of activating the abnormal object, the armored old man, the disguise challenges, pushed forward and performed a scene of sudden demise in front of everyone, perfectly preventing the mutual exchange of rings between himself and her. This effect and cost are truly extraordinarily abstract. Recalling the old man's smiling demise, Leon couldn't help but hiss at his expression full of difficulty, then complexly looked toward Princess Veronica before him. I take back what I said earlier, this ability might not necessarily be all good. The abnormal ability you've awakened is called blessings in disguise, capable of helping you make the most correct decisions, but as a cost, you will encounter unimaginable great resistance when you attempt to act upon this decision. Leon briefly explained the blessings in disguise ability and the prior causes and effects of the armored old man's incident, then solemnly advised. In conclusion, although the effect of this abnormal object is extremely powerful, its cost is equally shocking, but fortunately, it doesn't necessarily have to activate. You can choose not to use it. Veronica, You must quickly learn how to control this abnormal object to keep it in silent mode normally, only using it at critical moments. Otherwise, it will certainly cause big trouble. I understand. Seeing Leon's serious expression, Princess Veronica couldn't help but nod earnestly, then clenched her hand tightly, looking somewhat worriedly as she asked, "So what do we do now? Will there be other dangers? Should I temporarily pause the wedding and learn how to control this abnormal object?" "That's not possible." Leon smiled hearing this, then opened his palm to reveal a pair of small, exquisite plain ring boxes, and in Princess Veronica's surprised expression, Leon handed one of the boxes to her, then jokingly said with a smile, "Because of our wedding, the Minister of Ceremony nearly lost his life too. If we give up halfway now, wouldn't he have died for nothing earlier?" Ha ha! Amused by Leon's hellish joke, the princess couldn't help but purse her lips forcefully, and then she couldn't help but roll her eyes at him before correcting. "Don't joke about such matters. Moreover, it's the ceremony department, not some funeral department. Never mind, with me here today, regardless of his department, it won't affect our wedding." Seeing Princess Veronica relaxed, her tense expression gone, Leon couldn't help but chuckle, then took out the gemstone-adorned ring from the ring box and extended his hand toward her again. "Let's go, we're supposed to exchange rings." Watching his hand extend toward her again for the second time today, not attempting to avoid, Princess Veronica's gaze softened before she lowered her head and gently replied, "Yes." When she extended her arm covered with white gauze, with fingertips resting in Leon's palm, the originally noisy environment in the hall seemed to be isolated, inexplicably quieting down. At this moment, it's as if the whole world vanished, leaving only the gentle hand holding hers, and a thought that sounded overly cliché but was incredibly real floated in her mind. If time could stop and forever remain at this moment, how wonderful would that be? After her mind, slightly dizzy, wandered while following the strength transmitted through the hand. Returning to the stage, that warm, firm hand suddenly let go. Suddenly losing the warmth wrapped by that hand, Princess Veronica felt a sense of loss, but soon, a slightly cool platinum wedding ring replaced that warm hand, gently wrapping her finger. And that hand just departed also reappeared in front of her, catching the hand she extended, voluntarily fitting on another ring already heated by her grip. Due to exchanging rings with a beautiful adult woman in front of everyone, forming a one-on-one marriage relationship, you have successfully activated the Black Iron level badge, Married Individual. Phew! Hearing the familiar noise in his ears, Leon couldn't help but curl his lips in delight. Alright, besides Materialist Soul Red and Alcohol Immortal Chong Huang, I've finally acquired my third colorful badge. Wait a minute. The name doesn't match either. Realizing something was wrong, Leon quickly opened the badge panel, and then at the bottom, he found a new iron-black badge. Married Individual. A natural human who has officially become espoused with the opposite sex through the legal or socially recognized marriage ceremonies of the current country. Where effect, according to the current law of the Kingdom of Lutung, enjoy a certain degree of tax reduction and can obtain 50% of the total assets during a divorce. Advanced route. If you continue to wear this badge for more than 7 years, it will automatically advance to the Bronze Badge, Copper Anniversary. Hidden trait. No need to wear. Actively showing the wedding ring on your hand will make the high moral boundary opposite sex give up pursuing you, but for some groups with special fetishes, it might have the exact opposite strange effect. What's with these groups with special fetishes? Does it mean it has a special effect on female minotaurs with the last name Chow? What kind of weird thing is this? Where's my third colorful badge? Leon. Just as Leon was looking at the Married Individual badge on the panel, which seemed easy to attract those who like cows, not knowing what to say, a soft body suddenly embraced him tightly, with 2 soft arms wrapping around his waist. That's great. Sob. Taking advantage of the lack of a referee at the scene, after completing an illegal act of carrying the ball, Princess Veronica buried her face in Leon's chest, her voice slightly choking. I was always worried before, afraid you would Stop. Let's not talk about it. I won't talk about it. Can you hug me for a moment? Feeling the slight dampness on his chest and looking at the princess who was joyfully crying with her head buried, Leon couldn't help but pause, and then a trace of guilt flashed in his eyes. Honestly, although the badge is indeed very important, compared to Veronica, who prepared the wedding wholeheartedly, thinking about the badge at such a time made him feel somewhat like a jerk. Okay. After softly responding, Leon decisively shut off the badge panel, wrapped his arms around Princess Veronica's waist in return, and gave her an equally passionate hug, then used his chin to press against her forehead, gently comforting her. Don't cry. Today is a happy day, and it will only get happier from now on. Smile. Okay? Muffled in response, listening to the applause and cheers from the guests below, Princess Veronica, whose face was red from behind her ears to her neck, finally raised her face and reluctantly let go of her arms around Leon's waist after half a minute. Seeing her emotions finally calm down, the officiant next to them, whose heart was in his throat, couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief. It scared me to death. It's not a big deal to cry at a wedding, but there's still the coronation ceremony for inheriting the throne, photo-taking, portraits, receiving homage, and a series of other processes. Crying is not allowed for any of those. Thankfully, His Highness the Prince persuaded her. Otherwise, if the future queen couldn't control her emotions and cried when ascending the throne, I really don't know how to handle that. After giving Leon a grateful look, considering that the prenuptial prayer and exchange of vows had already been skipped in bits, the officiant, afraid of any more unexpected changes, immediately loudly declared them married and sneaked a signal to the somewhat disoriented band below. No matter about the process, even if the minister in charge of ceremonies has been taken away, the two on stage are the biggest process now. Play music. Dance quickly. Alright. Play music. Quick. Play music. Receiving the officiant's signal, the band conductor immediately perked up, then quickly raised the baton and tapped 3 times on the podium, signaling the members to start playing. The choir, also disrupted by the plan, responded to the music, quickly finding their positions and singing in unison. The hundreds of hanging baskets suspended above the hall were simultaneously pulled up and down, releasing a flurry of softly scattered petals that drifted down with the breeze entering through the skylight on the dome. Great, now the wedding atmosphere is finally up. Satisfied with the petals cascading from the sky, just as Leon was about to continue speaking to Princess Veronica, he felt his pant leg being gently tugged. When he looked over in surprise, he found Melanie, dressed in a petite suit, holding a little flower basket in her hand, eagerly looking at him and quietly asking during the break, "Big brother, when are you going to throw the bouquet?" Throwing the bouquet should be, "Melanie, when did you get here?" "She's been here the whole time." William, donning a finely tailored little suit, emerged from behind Princess Veronica and calmly explained, "The two of us are a flower girl and a ring bearer. When the sister-in-law was walking down the red carpet earlier, Melanie and I were holding up the train from behind. When you two exchanged rings, Melanie was throwing flower petals from the basket. Oh right, it was me who brought you the ring box." "Big brother, you weren't ignoring us all the time, were you?" No, I was just teasing Melanie. Haha. Ha ha ha. Quickly laughing awkwardly to cover it up, Leon couldn't help but feel extremely embarrassed as he cleared his throat twice. "Really sorry, you two are only up to Veronica's waist, and my eyes have been looking too high, making it hard to notice when you're standing close. Didn't pay much attention. Also, your clothes were padded quite a bit, not only changing your figures but also making you heavily made up, and you've been standing behind others, so all in all, it's my fault this time. Big brother will definitely notice you next time. Forget it, no more excuses. It's all Big Brother's fault. This is the first time Big Brother is getting married, so he's understandably nervous and overlooked you." Patting Melanie's little head with a guilty conscience, just as Leon was about to say something, he heard the music from below the stage suddenly change, shifting from the original cheerful and lively to solemn and dignified. At the same time, the officiant also completed his emotional switch, transformed from a face full of joy to a solemn and dignified one, raising his hand towards Princess Veronica. Besides the wedding with Prince Leon, there's another equally important event today, and that is Princess Veronica's succession ceremony. Goodness, who decided this sequence? The transition is too abrupt. Why does it feel so disorganized? Displeased, Leon glanced in the officiant's direction. Before he could speak, Anna, who had been waiting for a long time, dashed forward, scooping up the younger siblings with one hand, and carried them backstage. Feeling a certain ominous premonition, Melanie couldn't help but widen her eyes and struggled, reaching out to her brother and sister-in-law. The bouquet. Where's the bouquet? What do you need a bouquet for? Do I look like one? See, I told you before. Watching his sister, who seemed to have been struck by lightning, become completely dazed, William, also being carried by Anna, couldn't help but sympathetically pat her. High stakes may offer high rewards, but only if you can get them. So my judgment was correct. It's better to get your pocket money than to rely on bouquet revenue. Wah-ah-ah. When Melanie's dream of sudden wealth shattered and she cried breathlessly backstage, the inheritance ceremony in the hall outside proceeded swiftly according to the process set by some old man in armor. After a brief introduction of the situation, following the host's instructions, a large number of attendants poured in from the side doors. Half of the wedding decorations were quickly taken down, and the corresponding family emblems of the major nobles of the kingdom were arranged. Immediately after, the previously sealed wings and side halls on both sides of the main hall were also opened one after another, revealing a large number of stored items, which Leon curiously glanced at, appearing to be royal family emblems, historical documents, ceremonial artifacts, and other commemorative items. What was more astonishing was that in the wings closest to the main platform on both sides, in addition to various commemorative items and the thrones used for the coronations of past kings, there was even an oversized 3-story tomb. Yes, a tomb. Brought to a side hall to wait, Leon confirmed several times that his entire wedding with Princess Veronica was completed between two massive tombs. And what's more absurd was that in front of these two gigantic tombs, there was even a newly placed table, with a variety of drinks and food on it. A red and white affair held together, finalized the gifts and set up the offerings. Turns out that old man's ceremony department is really freaking good at organizing funerals. Leon, the one on the left is the ancestor's tomb, the one on the right is the first king's tomb. Whether it's a wedding or an inheritance ceremony, it's held between these two tombs, symbolizing the watch over future generations and the entire kingdom. Seeing Leon constantly staring at the two large tombs with a slightly strange expression on his face, Princess Veronica, who was changing clothes, took the opportunity to softly explain. As you know about the ancestor, he did not leave a body, and the first king was not buried here but, like the ancestor, only left a cenotaph, so both of these are empty tombs, you don't need to worry about it. Known far and wide in the realm of the dead, Leon naturally wouldn't be concerned about two tombs. Even if those two did hear sounds and crawled up to greet him, he wouldn't mind. Waving his hand to show that he didn't care, Leon was just surprised to find two tombs in the hall, staying with Princess Veronica in the side hall as she swapped her wedding dress for a robe, then holding her hand to walk out of the hall and once again tread upon the red carpet. My queen! After taking a few steps toward the side door of the hall, Leon turned back, joking to the obviously nervous princess. Don't be nervous, although I'm not on stage this time. I'll be sitting closest to the main platform. So this is still you walking to me. Just think of it as walking down the wedding aisle once more. Drawn into a smile by Leon's teasing, Princess Veronica took a deep breath, nodded with a smile toward him, and then elegantly stepped onto the red carpet, gracefully walking into the main hall. Under the gaze of the kingdom's major and minor nobles, as well as the envoys from various countries who came to observe the ceremony, the princess, wearing a royal ceremony robe with a tail over 5 meters long, moved up the red carpet to the main platform amidst the rising music. Then, an armored old man with 4 bottles of alchemical potions strapped to his arms and something resembling a pacemaker on his chest was wheeled out as the oldest living member of the royal family, substituting for the ancestor and the first king to witness the ceremony and guide the vows. I swear. After a gentle glance at Leon below, Princess Veronica took the crown and scepter, then guided by the armored old man, placed her hand on her heart and proclaimed loudly and firmly, "I will defend the dignity and authority of the kingdom, protect the people who follow me, just as I am doing now. I will uphold the friendship with all races, honor past promises, just as I am doing now. I will maintain the laws of the kingdom's territories and subordinate lands, just as I am doing now. I will respect the customs of different peoples and regions, just as I am doing now. I will safeguard." After this long and extensive oath, which practically covered nobles, commoners, laws, economy, military, and every other aspect imaginable, Princess Veronica paused slightly, then looked toward Leon, who smiled up at her, and softly yet firmly supplemented the final sentence. "I will love my husband, be with him for a lifetime until death do us part." This, not expecting her to add such a sentence to the vows, Leon was momentarily stunned, and his heart instantly filled with a great warmth. At the same time, a familiar noise reappeared in his ears for the second time. "ZZZ. The marriage contract between you and Princess Veronica has persisted beyond her inheritance of the throne, without being nullified. Your gold-level badge, Prince of Traveling Thrush, successfully advanced to a colorful badge, the man behind the queen, ivory white. The man behind the queen, colorful ivory white, unable to upgrade a small house. I lay blue bricks, you tile the green roof. A small river, youth on the left bank, dusk on the right bank. A long road, you walk ahead, I chase behind. A bowl of soft rice, not only very white but also fragrant. Equipped effect. When standing behind a queen, you will temporarily gain the special status, soft rice is very fragrant. Soft rice is very fragrant. When you hug a woman older than you from behind, whispering, "Dear sister, I don't want to work hard anymore," in her ear, you will temporarily gain control over all her assets, and can directly make full use of them, ignoring any realistic conditions. But as the cost of freeloading, each time after using this ability, you must unconditionally fulfill a request from the other party. And until the request is completed, this badge cannot be reactivated. Advanced route, already at the highest level, cannot be advanced further. Hidden trait, no need to equip freeloading, also requires capital. Therefore, in the eyes of all female beings with the title of queen, your appearance will be adjusted to a certain extent to match their aesthetic preferences. Damn. Degree_o/. Now I see why the color of this colorful badge is ivory white. So it's actually the color of soft rice white. Upon reading the description for the man behind the queen, ivory white, Leon involuntarily drew a sharp breath, his forehead veins throbbing uncontrollably. What kind of crap badge is this? That utterly embarrassing activation condition. Is it trying to get me killed? And the effect is just too trashy, totally unworthy of the colorful level. Given the relationship between Veronica and me, as long as the request is not outrageously excessive, she would most likely not refuse, so what's the use of this badge? This badge is literally just... Wait a second. Suddenly thinking of something, Leon quickly reopened the badge panel, focusing on the shameful activation description on the new ivory white colorful badge. After hugging a woman older than me from behind and saying, "Sister, I don't want to work hard anymore," then gaining control of all her assets, I can directly make full use of them, ignoring any realistic conditions. Ignoring any realistic conditions. In a haze, after catching on to a certain feeling, Leon suddenly gasped, vaguely grasping the correct usage of the soft rice emblem. This meaning that disregards any current conditions is likely to encompass even the condition of location in reality. So theoretically, just standing behind Veronica would allow one to mobilize the entire army of the Kingdom of Lutung right before them. And this is not even the end. If the definition of assets is broad enough to include all the citizens and their wealth, then standing behind Veronica, one could even pack up and take the entire Kingdom of Lutung in the blink of an eye. It's ridiculous, truly ridiculous. If my assumption is true, then this effect surpasses that of the alcohol immortal, Cheng Huang, and its operability far exceeds the singular effect of the immortal in liquor. After slightly expanding his thoughts and contemplating several possible operations, Leon couldn't help but click his tongue, suddenly feeling that the activation conditions for the man behind the queen cream white seemed, perhaps, maybe not completely unacceptable? Even if activating this soft rice emblem requires enduring a tremendously embarrassing social death, for Veronica and me, we can entirely treat it as some sort of, special interest. She shouldn't, probably won't view me differently because of this, right? In any case, although the activation process of this thing is indeed disgraceful, if it's thrown to someone close, then rounding up a bit, can it be considered as not losing face? Leon. Feeling the slight moistness in her palm, the princess sitting in the carriage while holding Leon's hand during the coronation parade, couldn't help but smile, slightly turned her body, and whispered teasingly, "Why is your palm sweating? You're not nervous, are you?" Frankly speaking, this is more like desperately overcoming an excess of shame rather than nervousness. Don't worry, the parade will end soon. Seeing Leon remain silent, Princess Veronica. No. Queen Veronica squeezed his hand reassuringly, softly consoling him. If you're not quite suited to this kind of setting, then leave the greetings to me. Sorry, I pulled you into this without asking. Maybe I've put you in a difficult position. No, it's not. Looking at the slightly apologetic look in Queen Veronica's eyes, Leon couldn't help but shook his head. I'm not nervous because of the crowd. I was just thinking about something. Got a bit lost in thought. Thinking about something that makes your palms sweat? Hearing this, Queen Veronica blinked. Then, during a pause between two hand waves, curiously and expectantly asked, "What are you thinking about? Are you thinking about our future? Thinking of how to eat your soft rice in the future could perhaps count as thinking about our future?" Facing Queen Veronica's curious gaze, Leon hesitated for a couple of seconds. Then, considering her honesty and sincerity towards him, couldn't help but bite his lip and say, "If I tell you, you must promise not to laugh." "Don't worry, I definitely won't laugh." "All right then." Seeing Queen Veronica's earnest expression, and unwilling to utilize this powerful emblem just yet, Leon figured he might as well lay it out since it would be a social death eventually, and frankly said, "I was just thinking about whether to eat your soft rice in the future." Earlier, observing Leon's alternating serious and tense expressions, she thought he was pondering some serious concerns, but it turns out he was actually wondering whether to eat her soft rice. Queen Veronica couldn't help but burst into laughter. Sorry, I couldn't hold back. Ha. Directly laughing into Leon's chest, Queen Veronica couldn't help but cover her mouth firmly, calming down with a great deal of effort, then wrapped her arm around Leon's, suppressing her amusement to say, "If you want to, then go ahead and eat it. I even hope you eat more, eat heartily. After all, most of the time it's been you helping me, and being needed or even relied upon by you, I'm absolutely willing. All right then, this is on you." Feeling slightly less ashamed with the affirmation from the source, Leon, after briefly explaining the general way to eat soft rice, again asked Queen Veronica whether she minded such usage. Upon hearing that the soft rice Leon spoke of turned out to be a special abnormal object, and covers such a vast range, Queen Veronica was quite astounded, pondered for a while, and then spoke. "Leon, as far as material and wealth are concerned, it's fine, but when it comes to soldiers and citizens, would they be in danger being moved by you? There will definitely be some, but in truly dangerous scenarios, I wouldn't casually deploy people." With a mental rundown of his adversaries, Leon slightly shook his head and said, "In the situations I generally handle, an ordinary army shouldn't be of much help, and if I truly need a large number of people, it would probably be for tasks like resettlement or rescue. Besides that, it's those scholars from the Kralik Kingdom, but they wouldn't be directly summoned. Rather, their researched items would be used, mostly special effects or more powerful weapons. Then there's no issue." Sighing softly with relief, Princess Veronica smiled and said, "What's mine is yours. Summon whatever you need. If it's able to assist you, it's considered as the kingdom contributing to safeguarding humanity. By the way, when you activate this abnormal object, do you need me to cooperate in any way? Need you to be held by me. Held? Hearing Leon's words, Princess Veronica couldn't help but blink, then tentatively reached out and hugged Leon. Is this all right? No. Shaking his head, Leon coughed and said, You need to be held by me from behind. Held from behind? Upon hearing this, Princess Veronica's face flushed red. She bit her lower lip lightly, remained silent for quite a while. But when the carriage rounded a corner, she quickly lifted herself directly into Leon's lap. How soft! Unexpectedly engulfed in a warm embrace, Leon instinctively wrapped his arms around her waist, while Princess Veronica pulled the carriage curtain, shyly whispered, And then? What needs to be done next? And then, the moment of social death. Thinking about what he was about to say, Leon's face couldn't help but flush slightly, and then he leaned down to her ear, speaking in his lifetime's softest voice, like a mosquito hum. Dear sister, I don't want to strive anymore. Buzz. As Princess Veronica's ears turned crimson with Leon's embarrassing declaration, an invisible roar began to rapidly spread in Leon's mind. Amid the radiant and lustrous ivory light emanating from the badge panel, Leon's consciousness seemed to be yanked out of his body by an invisible hand and was forcefully flattened and spread out, instantly covering the entire square, linking up to nearly 10,000 souls. And this seemed to be just the beginning. The souls within the square and nearby areas became pillars for the bridge construction, lifting Leon's expanded consciousness and quickly extending it further afield. In just a few breaths, Leon's consciousness expanded 1,000-fold, almost encompassing the entire royal capital and even vaguely linking to the Virgin Branch in the government district, where he saw the red-haired director staring at a crystal ball. So, even the Virgin Branch, which is affiliated with the police department, counts as a part of Veronica's assets. Before Leon could examine closely, the souls of nearly 10 million residents of the royal capital linked into his consciousness like scattered stars across the galaxy, becoming the second batch of pillars, supporting his consciousness to spread even further. Mountains, rivers, railways, waterways, whether natural or man-made, whether living beings or inanimate minerals, everything defined as assets, linked into Leon's consciousness with that invisible ivory glow, releasing signals that could be invoked. Feeling his ever-expanding vision and the things he could almost command at will within his consciousness, Leon's soul even had a strange illusion. At this moment, he truly felt like a god, not the kind that could be casually eliminated by the red-haired director, but a genuine dominator of everything. If he wished, he could, with a wave of his hand, directly mine an untouched mountain, alter river courses with his will, or even empty the large lake east of the royal capital and move it above the city, causing a disastrous, "Damn, why am I having such thoughts?" Realizing something seemed off, and with the tiny vessels in his nose breaking under inexplicable pressure, releasing a flow of warm, iron-scented fluid, Leon hurriedly released his arm from the queen's waist, forcibly interrupting the effect of the man behind the queen. As he voluntarily let go, the effect of the soft rice badge ceased, and Leon's previously expansive consciousness was instantly withdrawn from the vast world, reluctantly returning to his mind. Too dangerous. Catching his breath rapidly, after recalling the sensation of controlling everything just now, Leon didn't feel eager to try again. Instead, a sense of inexplicable resistance surfaced in his heart. When his consciousness was drawn out by the badge and began spreading outward, his thinking and even self within that consciousness were compromised, with self-control waning rapidly. More dangerously, as more souls linked over, his consciousness seemed to suffer from some degree of contamination, similar to using an abnormal object. Although none, including the director, was consciously influencing him, even the unconscious stray thoughts, after being accumulated millions of times, greatly impacted his mind. Thus, although this badge is surprisingly powerful, the risks are equally high when using it. Mishandling could indeed lead to a loss of self, completely sinking into that feeling of total control. With the current strength of his soul, it seems the limit is already reached by mobilizing half the royal capital. To command the entire kingdom without losing self would likely require crossing the difference between man and God. No, not even becoming a true god might be enough. Leon. Noticing Leon's body suddenly stiffen, and his breathing turned unusually rapid, Queen Veronica first felt a moment of shyness, but sensing something amiss, she quickly turned around, startled by the paleness of Leon's face. "Why are you having a nosebleed? And your face looks so pale." "It's okay. I'm fine." Taking the handkerchief she hastily handed over, after wiping his nosebleed, Leon, whose head was splitting with pain, weakly waved it away. "I just tested that thing, didn't control the degree on the first use, received too much information, my brain is a bit, overloaded, it won't happen next time. Sigh. As long as you're okay." Seeing that Leon's complexion indeed gradually improved, Queen Veronica couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief, quickly moving away from Leon, with a hint of concern. "Leon, are you sure you're okay? Should we see a doctor?" "No need. I understand my condition. It's just like overthinking. A rest and a nap will do. The parade shouldn't be disrupted, you continue on." "All right then." Seeing Leon insist that he was fine, Queen Veronica did not press further, simply advising him to inform her immediately if he felt unwell, then urged the coachman to speed up the subsequent journey. As for Leon, who was a bit dizzy from the impact of the scattered and chaotic consciousness of the numerous citizens of the royal capital, he stopped continuing his acknowledgments, leaned back against the carriage seat with eyes closed, and checked his condition. As he realized quickly enough, his body was fine, except for a headache and a bit of nosebleed, which required no treatment and would recover on its own soon. However, the impact on his soul was quite severe, as though tens of thousands of different voices were quarreling inside his brain, causing his soul to continuously churn, needing 3 to 5 days of rest to calm down, hoping it won't delay matters. Wait a moment. While checking his soul state, Leon discovered something seemed off. He quickly opened the badge panel to search through and finally found some overlooked notifications. "Warning. Current soul load is too high. Please stop activating the badge promptly." "Warning. To avoid irreversible damage, the badge effect will be forcibly terminated upon descending into a state of confusion. The effect of the colorful badge, the man behind the queen, Ivory, has been self-terminated. The current soul load is decreasing, expected to return to normal level in 5 seconds. Your soul has adapted to overloading, resulting in slight expansion. Your contamination value has increased. Current contamination value, 35.7. How much? 35.7? And that's slight?" Seeing his contamination value surge by over 10 points, Leon's eyes widened involuntarily, and an uncontrollable joy surged in his heart. Previously, his contamination value was only 20.5. Though increasing 20 points in 3.5 months was an astonishing speed, it was still only mid-level for a second-level cleaner. Now, with a contamination value of 35.7, he has crossed the 30-point threshold, successfully stepping into the level 1 cleaner realm, and henceforth, when facing the Slaughter King Association, he wouldn't need to fear, "Oh, they average 60 points each, never mind then." Recalling his adversaries, Leon's smile faded slightly, but his gaze towards the soft rice badge on the panel suddenly filled with admiration. Just one overload, and his contamination value increased by 10 points directly. This speed is amazing. He had quite a few scattered authorities, with no thresholds until the 60-point contamination value, so as long as his soul and body could accommodate the contamination, devouring more soft rice would allow rapid ascension. Even though soul overloading impacts him, needing rest even after recovery and unable to use it consecutively, and future effects might not be as impressive, this is already the fastest method he found to raise contamination value currently. Compared to rapidly enhancing contamination value, what's a little social death for 100 or so times? "I can't take it anymore. I really can't watch this." Looking from afar at Leon in the carriage, whose nosebleed hasn't dried yet and is leaning, pale-faced, against Queen Veronica, the female cleaner in the banquet hall couldn't help but hiss. Then, with a barely contained expression, she adjusted her glasses. "If it's just sticky and lovey-dovey, fine, maybe that's just how couples interact, and there's nothing for an outsider like me to judge. But this bastard hugged her from behind once, and suddenly, a torrential nosebleed, then, weakly reliant on her. Really? The future Aquarius director of the Cleanup Bureau? The strongest level 3 cleaner ever, who single-handedly destroyed half of the dream realm. A ruthless person capable of eating a true god raw, can't deal with a bit of nosebleed? If the true god you slew saw this, they might come back to life out of rage then die of annoyance. And you even pulled the carriage's cover down, laying directly on that big bear woman's lap? With a sneaky expression as if you'd succeeded in stealing chickens? You are disgusting, childish, lewd. You've almost lost all face for the Cleanup Bureau. After expressing extreme distaste, she glanced at Leon, lying relaxed on Queen Veronica's lap, with his face completely obscured by two big thunders. The female cleaner instinctively took off her far-sighted glasses and viciously cursed him in her heart. Shallow man, look at that cheap smile. What's so good about big and dumb? Small and delicate beauty is the most harmonious. Princess Melisande. Just as the female cleaner packed away her glasses, full of complaints, found the food supply point, and began concentrating on tearing into the tender little lamb chops, the Northern Kingdom's foreign minister approached, eyes full of excitement to report. I've already convinced the kingdom of Sao to Lord Stamo. Calling out the minister's name and interrupting his report, the female cleaner couldn't be bothered to deal with these petty affairs. So she emulated her brother, King Harvey's demeanor, and said seriously, although I'm the nominal delegate, you're the expert in diplomacy, so you don't need to report these matters to me, just make decisions yourself. Princess Melisande. The foreign minister hesitated upon hearing her. But you're the highest-ranking person in this envoy. According to Northern regulations, all decisions I make must first pass your approval. No need, I trust you. Tiptoeing a little, she patted the foreign minister's shoulder, choosing not to grab her plate despite her rumbling stomach, and solemnly comforted. I know, because you reached this position at such a young age, some jealous people have spoken ill of you, making you pay attention to procedures, afraid of causing problems. But actually, you don't need to worry about such things. I know Harvey's character all too well. Rumors mean nothing to him. His only reason for choosing you is believing you truly have outstanding ability. Some inherent quality seemed to activate, as the foreign minister looked surprised, anxious to get rid of these bothersome affairs and enjoy a feast. She patted his shoulder again, eyes full of regal confidence, promising. Just like Harvey, we don't recognize your family background but your ability. So you don't need to report to me anymore. Do whatever you like boldly. I'll cover for you if anything goes wrong. Thank you for your great favor, princess. Though the female cleaner looked like a youthful maiden, when she calmed down and solemnly spoke, she really did have a shade of the Northern King's majesty. And as the foreign minister was awed by her demeanor, he shivered, then with admiration, full of energy, said, Then, I'll continue linking up efforts, striving to pull another kingdom into the alliance before the private banquet begins after the carriage parade, to jointly request the technology acquired from the Kralik Kingdom be made public. Aha! Responding with a solemn demeanor, though not really listening to his words, the female cleaner pushed hard on her abdomen to suppress her growling stomach, then urged with admiration. Go! I believe you can do it. I'm on it. Not noticing the beast-like noise behind him as he left, cheered on by the royal representative's full support, the foreign minister quickly walked back to the banquet hall and started conversing with envoys from various kingdoms with full vigor. Though failing to see the cleaner's true nature, suffering minimal mental CPU, the young foreign minister from the Northern Kingdom truly has some skills. With his relentless attempts to connect, and eloquent persuasion and analysis of interests, the envoy's attitudes indeed underwent significant changes. Despite those uncommitted to joining, most did not explicitly refuse. Some emissaries from allied nations of the Kingdom of Lutung, who remained friendly towards it, experienced some wavering after hearing the foreign minister from the Northern Kingdom delineate the stakes. Got it. Observing the envoy's expressions, hesitating, pondering, ambivalent, or worried, the foreign minister of the Northern Kingdom's smile grew even broader. While few were willing to stand out, often not explicitly opposing equates to a silent acceptance, indicating they've been affected by his proposal. Regarding the obstinate allied nations, There's never been an unbreakable alliance. In the face of overwhelming real interests, any alliance can be dismantled, and these envoys are equally unsure of their respective royal families' reactions. He's not expecting them to jump ship and stand by him, they just need to consider their domestic attitudes cautiously, reluctant to firmly side with that queen. Their overall stance is already irreversibly compromised. Nodding towards the kingdom of Seo's envoys, the tongue-tied foreign minister took a champagne from the tray but didn't drink yet, instead squinting toward the banquet hall entrance. The newly ascended Queen Veronica stepped off the carriage, holding her skirt, helping the pale-faced prince down and anxiously asking him something. Probably motion sickness? This guy barely looks able to stand straight. Gazing at the slender prince, wobbling, needing the queen's support to disembark, the Northern Kingdom's foreign minister confidently smiled, raising his wrist and downed the champagne. One, a previously wise queen, now seemingly enamored with men. The other, a pretty boy prince who needs a woman's help to stand. This time, advantage is mine. Your Majesty Queen Veronica. The diplomatic minister, eager to make a mark and deeply mistrusted by Princess Melisande, waited patiently until the queen announced the start of the private banquet. Before the old man in armor could begin cutting the cake, he stood up in impatience. May I ask if Princess Philea of the Kralik Kingdom, the only survivor after its destruction, is attending this banquet? Upon hearing someone inquiring about his neighbor's situation, Leon, who was recuperating his energy, raised an eyebrow and cast his gaze toward the speaking old man. Not that old indeed. Excluding the overly mature attire and the facial hair trend from the Northern Kingdom, judging by his skin, he was probably around 30, a few years older than Veronica. Although, to someone like himself who was barely 28 years and a few months old, with skin as tender as water due to increased contamination value, this person could be called an old man. Among the envoys with an average age over 40, he was still an undeniably young man. In summary, he was an old hand but of a naive type. Looking at the Northern Kingdom's diplomatic minister's attire and recognizing his origin from the emblems and clothing, Leon, who knew about the Northern Kingdom's intentions from Veronica, directly responded on her behalf. Philea has some matters to attend to and doesn't have any acquaintances here, so she didn't attend the banquet. Do you have something to discuss with her? Yes. I do have some matters I'd like to inquire about. After staring at Queen Veronica for a moment and failing to get the reaction he wanted, only seeing her calm and gentle smile, the Northern Kingdom's diplomatic minister furrowed his brows, then decisively shifted his focus to Leon, questioning with a burning gaze. Your Highness Prince, may I ask why Princess Philea of the Kralik Kingdom did not lead her people to rebuild the Kralik Kingdom, but instead chose to relocate the remaining populace and align Kralik Kingdom's inheritance with your kingdom? Allow me to answer that. Taking a glance at the still pale Leon, Queen Veronica grasped his arm and responded calmly. The Kralik Kingdom was hit by a once-in-a-millennium tsunami. While the people managed to escape, the entire royal capital was destroyed by the tsunami, lacking food, clothing, and resources, leaving them incapable of rebuilding the kingdom at its original site. Leon, coincidentally there for diplomatic talks on behalf of the kingdom, mediated and persuaded Princess Philea to accept our aid, temporarily relocating the disaster-stricken populace here for respite. However, afterward, neither she nor the former citizens of the Kralik Kingdom had much interest in rebuilding the city of machinery that was destroyed by the tsunami. Thus, they simply settled down. I see. Nodding understandingly, the Northern Kingdom's diplomatic minister smirked, then smiled and asked, so this means that the Kralik Kingdom's remnant citizens led by Princess Philea are merely temporarily residing in your kingdom and have not become your kingdom's vassals, being fully annexed, correct? Yes. With a gentle smile, Queen Veronica replied calmly. There's naturally no talk of annexation. It's just basic humanitarian support, providing aid to those affected by the maritime disaster, while also helping them integrate into a new environment as much as possible. After all, we've always been a nation striving for peace, having not waged a single external war for almost 2 centuries, instead continuously being on the defensive from invasions by other countries, losing quite a bit of territory. Wouldn't you agree? Facing Queen Veronica's veiled reproach, the Northern Kingdom's diplomatic minister was about to retort when a loud voice broke from beside him. "Your Majesty, Queen Veronica!" Calling out, a black, thin, and vigorous middle-aged man stepped forward beside the Northern Kingdom's diplomatic minister, looking firmly and loudly saying, "As allies who have maintained excellent relations with your kingdom for over a century, we, the Kingdom of Morna, are willing to stand with you to assist those Kralik Kingdom remnants who have lost their homes together." Pausing, the black, thin man glanced at the Northern Kingdom's diplomatic minister beside him and continued. "Additionally, the Northern Kingdom and the Fracture Kingdom have similar plans, and although the Kingdom of Sao cannot accommodate the refugees, it is willing to provide ships and routes to complete this benevolent act. You have no objections, right? Prince Lucian of the Morna Kingdom?" Seeing this eager, middle-aged man stepping forward, Queen Veronica subtly furrowed her brows, slightly surprised in her heart. The provocation from the Northern Kingdom was entirely expected, but as a staunch ally of the kingdom, the Morna Kingdom had not even contacted her privately, skipping the negotiation process of handing over benefits, and directly sided with the Northern Kingdom, which was indeed beyond her expectation. After all, the technology inherited from the Kralik Kingdom was an unimaginably rich fortune, one she couldn't fully monopolize alone. She would definitely share some with her allies. Considering her mother was a distant kin of the Morna Kingdom, the relationship between herself and the Morna Kingdom almost guaranteed benefits from their side, making it entirely unnecessary to oppose her. Success. Watching the slightly furrowed brows not immediately responding, but instead looking at her in contemplation, the Northern Kingdom's diplomatic minister couldn't help but smile confidently, giving her a meaningful smile in return. "Though the Morna Kingdom is your ally, Prince Lucian might not necessarily be your ally, and the Morna Kingdom's interest does not have to align with the interests of the family behind him. According to the treaty signed with the Kingdom of Sao, if he continued to stand by you, while Prince Lucian could secure benefits for Morna Kingdom, he and the family behind him would face opposition from the Northern King and the Kingdom of Sao. If he chooses to abandon supporting you and stands with us, the Morna Kingdom's benefits won't decrease, and he himself would not face opposition, even able to gain the largest share of benefits with our support, the cost being nothing more than offending you. But you, having recently ascended the throne and in urgent need of support from all sides, if rational, would not choose to conflict with the Morna Kingdom due to such irreparable loss, abandoning a potential ally, making this cost trivial. Further, with the Morna Kingdom, which should have allied with you, abruptly withdrawing support, the pressure on any second ally attempting to stand out would sharply increase, equating to directly opposing three major kingdoms. Among your remaining allies, no envoy of prince rank is present. The highest-ranking envoys attending are diplomatic ministers and a political party leader. Even if they have the guts and decisiveness to stand out, they lack the authority to represent their kingdoms taking on such a big issue. In other words, before allowing me to enter the hall, your failure was already destined when I interacted with Prince Lucian of the Morna Kingdom. It seems that the Northern Kingdom might have threatened Prince Lucian, or made some promises, or perhaps both. Queen Veronica, after glancing at the Northern Kingdom's foreign minister and guessing the possible tactics of the other side, did not ask directly. Instead, she gazed intently at the lean, dark-skinned, middle-aged man and calmly reminded him. After glancing at the Northern Kingdom's foreign minister, Queen Veronica slightly raised her voice, as if speaking both to Prince Lucian and to all the envoys. "The interests of the kingdom may not completely align with yours, but if your kingdom, due to your rash decision, loses what it should have gained, I'm sure it's an outcome none of us wish to see." This response speed. Impressive. Watching Queen Veronica, who had guessed his private negotiation tactics with only a few seconds of silence and immediately started countermeasures, a flicker of surprise flashed through the eyes of the Northern Kingdom's foreign minister. Though his negotiating methods with various countries' envoys were not identical, the core idea had not changed. Separate the messenger temporarily from the kingdom behind them, then escalate the situation to a level where they can't bear the possible impact, thereby forcing them to remain silent. To resolve the current situation, most people would think to counter each move, reduce the pressure faced by each country's envoys, and downgrade the importance of the matter to regain allies' support. But not only did Queen Veronica not do that, She even added fuel to the fire, choosing to escalate the situation further. Her words, though light, contained a deeper layer of threat. If the envoys from allied nations did not show support, she, though unable to fend off those wanting a piece of the pie, holding the knife to cut the cake, could ensure that the retreating allies only got the smallest piece. Kingdoms able to become allies usually have deep intertwining interests, making it difficult to openly tear apart from each other. So just as she couldn't attack an allied nation for not supporting her, the few allied nations that suffered a significant loss in the distribution of interests also found it hard to directly retaliate. And the inheritance of the Kralik kingdom is simply too massive. No kingdom could not covet it. Losing such a big piece due to diplomatic slip-ups must mean someone would stand up to take responsibility. As for who that person would be, who else other than us? Realizing the meaning behind Queen Veronica's words, the gathered envoys from various countries felt a tightness in their hearts, as if a black cauldron heavy enough to crush an elephant was silently hanging over their heads, ready to drop with a clang at any moment. Although the kingdom's interests might not be their own, should the kingdom lose the immense benefits it should have gotten, what they stand to lose goes far beyond mere interests. Regarding the issue of the Kralik kingdom's remnants, I have a few words to say. Soon, an envoy stepped forward, speaking solemnly on behalf of the kingdom behind him. For them, having lost their homeland and just settled down not long ago, there should not be any more upheavals. Maintaining the status quo is most suitable. I second that. Seeing someone take the lead, another envoy immediately stood up, following suit to state. Since the only surviving princess of the Kralik kingdom's royal family, Princess Phylea, has endorsed the current situation, we ought to show respect. Indeed, that's reasonable. With Queen Veronica's light comment, the allied envoys who had hesitated due to threats from the two major kingdoms now stood up one after another under increased pressure to show support for Queen Veronica. As these envoys voiced their support, the previously one-sided situation flipped instantly. So much so that, due to the envoys' eagerness to express themselves and the louder voices, the seemingly weaker side began to show signs of holding their own against the more powerful parties. Confirmed, politics is indeed something I can't comprehend. Watching the envoys argue more fiercely, each one brandishing verbal guns and swords and mocking with erudition, Leon, who felt as if his head might split from listening, rubbed his brow and then cast an admiring glance towards Queen Veronica. In terms of sheer intellectual level, he might not be inferior to these individuals, perhaps even superior. Yet each of these envoys, carefully selected as specialized verbal combatants from millions, were naturally talented and had undergone state-level training, at least a decade or two of targeted practice, able to weave 3 or 4 convolutions in a single sentence. Sometimes it took him a while to figure out what they were implying or mocking, and Veronica, being the youngest among them, handled these argument-adept envoys with ease. She could deftly tackle any sharp question posed to her, sometimes offhandedly replying with a comment that left the opponent red and white in the face, unable to respond for a good while. To be frank, if this weren't a private banquet but a more formal setting like a conference room where there were rules and conditions for speaking, it felt like Veronica alone could outdebate all 20-plus envoys opposite her. Her abilities in argument, diplomatic negotiations are truly maxed out. Hey! Just as Leon was trying to analyze the meaning behind the heated discussions, seeing if he could earn a diplomatic mastery badge, a familiar voice suddenly piped up from behind. Hick, care for a piece? After handing him a tray, the female cleaner, satisfied and her belly slightly round, commented, "Your wedding's a bit low-key, but the pastry chef you hired is quite brilliant. The cream tastes soft yet airy, and the cake's texture is exceptional. It's better than any cake I've had in the north. Hick. Wanna try? It's really tasty." Huh? Glancing at the cake on the tray she handed him, seeing its somewhat familiar color and appearance, Leon's heart suddenly skipped a beat. He spun around, looking towards the wedding cake Queen Veronica had specially ordered for this banquet. Sure enough, the towering cake that had stacked up 9 layers from bottom to top, initially meant to be sliced by the armored elderly man and shared among all important guests, had completely vanished, leaving only 2 crumbs barely larger than a palm on the plate he held. No way. That cake was meant for 150 people. Did you eat the whole thing by yourself? Glancing at the envoys still fighting over the cake, and then at the female cleaner who quietly nabbed the largest cake, Leon couldn't help but complain. What exactly are you here for? I'm obviously here, for diplomacy. Seemingly feeling Leon's disdain, the female cleaner, with her bulging belly, pointed discontentedly at the envoys. See, that's the foreign minister of our northern kingdom. He's my deputy. So your deputy is there fighting with others, and you're the official envoy sneaking off to eat and drink, huh? Looking at the female cleaner in front of him with cream still on her mouth, Leon gave up debating with this foodie and started scanning the banquet hall, searching for the figure of an armored old man. Seeing Leon suddenly stop talking to her and start looking around, the female cleaner couldn't help but ask curiously, Leon, what are you searching for? I'm looking for the head of the funeral department. Huh. The old man who yelled at you to leave when you went backstage to find me. Oh. With Leon's reminder, the female cleaner who was eating to her heart's content finally remembered the armored old man and instinctively shrank her neck. However, after searching the banquet hall, Leon didn't see the armored old man, which made him frown. Weird, given the old man's meticulous nature, shouldn't he be fixated on the banquet hall, ready to cut cake for the guests at any moment? Why is he not here? Or, wait. Recalling the old man's cake-cutting specialty, Leon suddenly realized and immediately turned back, grabbing the female cleaner who was trying to sneak away. Ah! Being caught by the wrist, the female cleaner let out a small scream and then bravely spoke. Let go. If you don't let go, I'll scream harassment. Give it a rest. What do you have worth harassing? After disdainfully pursing his lips, Leon forcibly dragged the escaping female cleaner back, darkly asking, Where's the old man? What did you do with him? I didn't. You're lying. Without even needing the sole vision of the black goat, seeing through the female cleaner's lie, Leon said disgruntledly, If he were fine, he definitely wouldn't let others touch the cake. Hurry up. Where is he? Forget it. Don't try to evade. Watching the female cleaner's eyes start to dart around, clearly thinking of ways to dodge, Leon said annoyed, I'm not planning to hold you accountable. Just want to ask him if there's a spare cake tower prepared. Not having cake at the wedding is too strange. Hurry up. Where is he? Oh, so you want another cake? Huh. Seeing Leon isn't trying to make trouble for her, the female cleaner couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief, then led him around the dance floor in the middle of the hall and pulled the tied-up armored old man from under a large round table covered with a tarp. After being dragged out from under the table and finally seeing daylight again, the armored old man didn't immediately confront the female cleaner, but instead looked intently at the disappeared cake tower, tearful. If I had known it would turn out like this, I shouldn't have snatched the job of arranging the wedding from Veronica. Sob. I'll retire when I get back. I'm done being the head. Never again. Wow, he's been hit hard. Even though Leon disliked the old man for causing trouble unnecessarily, seeing him lie on the ground with a face full of grievances and tears, Leon still felt a bit of sympathy, glaring at the female cleaner. Look at the good you've done. But he was the one to start it. Receiving Leon's reproachful look, the female cleaner couldn't help but protest aggrievedly. I just went over with my plate to have some cake. But the old man, for some reason, started yelling at me and even tried to chase me away. I didn't take him seriously because of his age, just went around and got myself a piece of cake. And he immediately got upset and wanted to hit me with his cane. Out of respect for you, I got hit several times but didn't retaliate. I just tied him up and stuffed him under the table to let him cool down. I've already been quite reasonable. You being reasonable. Imagine the possibility that the cake might represent me and Veronica sharing our happiness with the guests. And the key prop of the wedding banquet was touched. The armored old man had every reason to be upset. Forget it. Knowing that the Northern Kingdom's wedding doesn't have the custom of sharing cake with guests, Leon was simply not in the mood to explain the whole story to the female cleaner. He bent down to help the heartbroken armored old man up, removed the handkerchief stuffed in his mouth, and gently asked him a couple of questions. Despite the armored old man's stubbornness, he handled matters methodically. Considering the cake tower might be damaged during transport, he had indeed prepared a small spare cake tower just in case. After learning about the existence of the backup cake tower from the sobbing old armorer, Leon immediately sought out the standby official from the wedding department to try and get him to replace the backup cake tower. However, he received a rather indifferent response. "Your Highness, perhaps you should calm down for a moment." The official from the wedding department, with a peaceful expression on his face, advised harmoniously. "Actually, if you think about it, a wedding without a cake is not a big deal. It doesn't affect the love between you and Her Majesty Veronica, so just let it be." Question mark. What's wrong with this guy? After slightly furrowing his brows, Leon was about to ask again but suddenly realized something and turned to look at the female cleaner beside him. It was him who acted first. I was just helping him to calm down. After offering a couple of awkward explanations, under Leon's glare, the female cleaner took out a glass spray bottle from her bosom and sprayed it twice into her mouth, then exhaled towards the officials of the wedding department. Immediately afterwards, the official from the wedding department shivered suddenly, as if waking from a dream. He reacted with a panicked expression, repeatedly bowing towards Leon and said, "Your Highness, I wasn't just... I know it wasn't your fault just now." After offering a couple of warm sentences of comfort and instructing him to fetch the cake, Leon looked towards the female cleaner, somewhat curious, and asked, "Is this your abnormal object? What's its effect? Bewitching humans?" "No." The female cleaner shook her head and then candidly admitted without any defense, "This is sort of my bloodline ability. By using blood, breath, or some other mediums, it forcibly calms people down. Those who wanted to stop me from eating the cake all got a breath blown on them." "Oh right. Can the new cake later be for me?" "No." "Stingy." The diplomats, who were arguing intensely, just like Leon before, were unaware of the small commotion concerning the cake in the banquet hall and continued to argue about how to divide the large cake left by the Kralik kingdom. And as the discussion failed to reach a decision, the diplomats' quarrel gradually escalated, with both sides increasingly raising the intensity of their statements, subtly implying a brink of conflict. Her Majesty Veronica. After several attempts to make trouble were thwarted by Queen Veronica's retorts, the Northern Kingdom's foreign minister finally lost patience first, speaking with a severe expression to reveal his position. "Before my departure on this trip, His Majesty Harvey had instructed that if it is indeed necessary, the 3 legions stationed on the border between our 2 countries could provide me with the utmost support. I believe you should understand what I mean by this statement. Is that so?" Looking at the foreign minister, who had torn off all semblance of decorum and threatened her with war, Queen Veronica retracted her smile and calmly asked with a pensive gaze, "But I remember you seem to be just an assistant. Are you certain that Princess Melisande would also support this decision of yours?" "Of course." Having long received a promise, the foreign minister snorted coldly, then said confidently, "Princess Melisande, like His Majesty Harvey, has expressed trust in my ability and judgment. I can vouch for this statement. You can't vouch for it." Sighing inwardly that what was meant to happen will happen, Queen Veronica said with a cold face, "Princess Melisande is the chief envoy, and moreover the second heir to the royal family. Let her come out and speak with me." "As you wish." The Northern Kingdom's foreign minister, noting Queen Veronica's change in demeanor and keeping a stern expression, turned to look at the position where the female cleaner had been, intending to use her status as a princess to conduct a formal diplomatic consultation and issue a threat of war to Queen Veronica. However, no one was there. "Oh right, given Her Highness's usual habits, she's probably gone to find something to eat." Being quite familiar with the character of the Ashido royal family, the foreign minister instinctively glanced towards the buffet area, but to his surprise, he found no sign of her there either. "Your Highness!" The foreign minister, finding that even the dining area was missing the female cleaner, finally got a bit anxious. The group of diplomats quickly noticed something amiss and immediately began looking around the area, searching for the whereabouts of Princess Melisande. And after scanning the entire banquet hall, they finally located Princess Melisande by a round table under the distant cake tower. At this moment, Princess Melisande was sitting properly on a chair beside the cake tower, with a blissful expression on her face, waiting with her mouth open for something. Meanwhile, a prince, who had also disappeared for quite some time, reluctantly picked up a piece of cake with a fork and roughly stuffed it into her mouth. Just this piece, okay? If any more, I'm afraid it'll make you burst. Wah! Unaware that she had become the center of the entire banquet, after swallowing a cake softer than a sponge, the female cleaner licked the frosting from the corner of her mouth and pitifully said, "Can't I have just one more piece? You know, I am." "No!" With a raised hand signaling to stop, Leon grumbled. "I know you have the bloodline of gluttony. Considering how uncomfortable you'll be if you can't satisfy your appetite, I've already asked for another portion for you. The new cake tower is for later use. You can't touch it." Stingy. Disappointed by his words, the female cleaner leaned back on the chair, clutching her stomach, and complained. "When I came in, your people said I could eat whatever I wanted, as long as it was food. Why are you going back on your word now? It's different." Watching her occasionally sneak glances at the cake tower, clearly having not given up, Leon had no choice but to explain. "If it's something else, you can eat as much as you want. But this cake is part of the banquet, considered a part of the ceremony, and can only be eaten after it's been properly distributed according to protocol." "Oh!" After listening to Leon's explanation, the female cleaner nodded in realization and then, clutching her stomach, murmured somewhat embarrassed. "When you explain it like that, I understand. If that old man had explained it well earlier and not just chased people with a stick right from the start, I probably wouldn't have tied him up. That's hard to say." Leon pursed his lips upon hearing this, thinking that when the new cake tower was brought out earlier, her eyes went wide, even more excited than Melanie seeing her allowance. "After I stopped her, it was like her very soul became sad. If I hadn't reacted quickly enough, realized something was wrong with you, and swiftly scraped some leftover cake tower onto a plate for you to eat a couple of bites, you might have just cried right here." "No, I'm serious." Feeling Leon's distrust, the female cleaner huffed twice and then straightened herself to explain. "I have two special bloodlines. Although I find it hard to control the hunger from gluttony, I can force myself to calm down using the effects of the calm bloodline. See, I'm calm now, aren't I?" "Oh, please." Leon spoke with a face full of sarcasm. "You ate a cake meant for 150 people all by yourself, and you're telling me that's being calm? Calm? More like you're just stuffed." "When you put it like that, I guess I do feel a bit stuffed." The female cleaner rubbed her belly somewhat sheepishly, then huffed and leaned back on the chair, too embarrassed to softly plead. "Leon, could you get me some peppermint cake or ginger tea? Or maybe some sour plums would do. I'm feeling pretty uncomfortable from being stuffed." "You deserve it." Always wanting to eat everything you see. Though tempted to tease her further, the female cleaner's petite form and the small circle of baby fat under her chin made her seem like a young teenager, around 13 or 14 years old. And Leon, having lived 2 lifetimes, had a mental age at least double hers. Watching her uncomfortable look from being stuffed, he couldn't bear to leave her there in that state and got up to head to the food counter to get her something to help digest. "Ah, he's so nice." Seeing Leon graciously going to fetch her something, the female cleaner felt moved and sniffled, then shouted towards his retreating figure, "Leon, when you come to the Northern Kingdom, I'll treat you to roasted elk. My brother is especially good at grilling meat. You'll surely love it. Princess Melisande." Just when the female cleaner was emotionally promising, a familiar voice full of grievances suddenly came from behind, startling her so much she shivered. Looking at the flustered and shocked cleaner turn her head, the diplomatic minister of the Northern Kingdom couldn't help but say in a plaintive tone, "Could you please explain to me what exactly were you doing just now?" "Just now? And why did so many people come over suddenly?" Did you finish the talks that quickly? Stamo, sir. Before the female cleaner could react, Lucian Prince from the Kingdom of Morna, dark-skinned and skinny, spoke with difficulty. Didn't you tell me before that your two countries are mortal enemies due to conflict over Ryan Port and Snow Mountain Pass? How come? How come? I don't know how this happened either. This is shameful deceit. The North Sea commander from the Kingdom of Sao stepped out from the crowd and angrily shouted, Stamo, the reason I agreed to join hands with you this time was based on 20 years of trust from past cooperation. But you're secretly making deals with them? Stamo, sir. The foundation of cooperation is honesty. But it appears you have something important and are secretly hiding it from us. Stamo, sir. Regarding the current situation, you must give us an explanation. Stamo, can you justify this to us? Asterisk your ma. Ending the alliance. Wait, everyone, please calm down. Everyone, please calm down first. We will definitely give everyone an explanation. Faced with the envoy's angry accusations, sarcastic remarks, and righteous denouncements, unable to win the argument, the diplomatic minister felt like he was plunged into a sauna, drenched with sweat due to the increasingly heated words around him. After finally managing to soothe the agitated ambassadors, the desperate diplomatic minister hurriedly turned back to the cleaner sitting on the chair, urgently urging, Princess Melisande, given the situation, please state your position. Although capable of instantly knocking everyone down, the cleaner was, after all, just a teenager. Facing a group of intimidating middle-aged men, she couldn't help but feel a bit flustered. She instinctively slid back in her seat a little and, staring at the envoys watching her intently, anxiously whispered, What stance should I declare? You need to declare your position and tell everyone whose side you're on. Then, I'm on your side. Well, that seems like the wrong position. Seeing the diplomatic minister's extremely speechless expression, the cleaner's intellect upsurged after a hearty meal, making her realize the kind of stance these people were expecting. I'll say it again. Sucking in her stomach, the girl regained some princess-like presence, raised her right hand, and solemnly declared, I am the princess of the Northern Kingdom, the she-wolf galloping across the ice plains. I swear by my surname that I only leave enemies with the coldest. Here's the ginger tea you wanted. Ah, thank you. Turning back with a delighted smile to take the cup Leon handed over, the cleaner rewarded him with a sweet smile, then turned back, her face serious, and continued, I only leave enemies with the coldest gaze and the sharpest fangs. When you face the enemy, do you only have a cold gaze and sharp fangs? Watching the female cleaner smile so broadly when looking at Leon, but with a taut face when looking at us, the envoys from various kingdoms fell into a speechless silence. So, by this logic, you're in cahoots with him? We are actually your enemies? Ah, no. Facing the group of envoys with darkened faces, the female cleaner realized her mistake and hurriedly waved her hands to explain. I'm on your side. He is. At this point, she instinctively paused, waited until Leon had gone far to find Queen Veronica, and then finally relaxed her face and whispered, He's my enemy. As a princess of the Northern Kingdom, I would never collude with him. Please rest assured. Rest assured? After seeing your behavior, we might as well give up. Veronica. Disregarding the female cleaner being besieged by allied envoys, Leon walked back to the place where envoys from various kingdoms argued previously, flipped his hand, and took out a small plate of red velvet cake from the mirror world, handing it to Queen Veronica. Are you hungry? Would you like to eat something to tide you over? Yes. Looking at Leon's still candid eyes and hearing his caring inquiry, Queen Veronica, who was a bit worried before, immediately relaxed. Although the situation over there was somewhat concerning, Leon's expression didn't seem like he had done anything wrong, so the situation was probably not as she had feared. However, although rationally she could think clearly, upon recalling the previous scenes, Queen Veronica still felt a bit jealous. Looking at the plate handed over, her lips slightly moved, wanting similar feeding treatment, but unfortunately, with envoys around, she couldn't bring herself to ask. Regretfully taking the plate, Queen Veronica ate 2 pieces on her own, then handed it back to her attendant, and subsequently linked arms with Leon, introducing him to each envoy present. After politely greeting each one, Leon habitually touched his cufflinks, using the black goat's soul vision to examine the soul colors of these envoys. Ambition, integrity, cunning, loyalty, doubt, humility. Overall, the good and bad were half and half, but slightly more bad. None belonging to pure good. The souls seemed mixed and chaotic, lacking the cleaner's pure, foolish innocence. On the flip side, these people also didn't seem to be related to bad. Their souls, although chaotic and noisy, didn't appear filthy, indicating they should have a decent moral bottom line while pursuing interests. All in all, this definitely matches Veronica's taste in allies, without any hidden schemers. After examining the allies, Leon's expression instantly became much more approachable, and with Queen Veronica's introductions, he politely shook hands with each envoy, actively showing goodwill. As Leon's demeanor softened, the envoys from allied countries also collectively breathed a sigh of relief. For some reason, although Prince Leon's expression was very gentle, not cold, when he doesn't smile, he brings an inexplicable pressure. This strange sense of oppression isn't the demeanor cultivated from years of giving orders but more like an instinctual fear, similar to how one unconsciously watches an elephant's steps when too close. Even if this elephant raises its trunk to greet you amicably, the disparity in mass inevitable makes one worry if they might get stomped. Lord Leon. Having shaken hands with Leon's trunk, feeling the warmth of human skin, the leader of the Orleson Kingdom's Conservative Party finally temporarily shrugged off the strange pressure and smiled. I have long heard of your esteemed name. I originally planned to formally meet you with a wedding gift on behalf of the kingdom once the banquet started, so I didn't come to visit. I hope you don't mind. You are too kind. Having received training from the armored old man and learned some basic etiquette, Leon hastily returned the gesture, somewhat clumsily. Realizing from the soul state that this was a genuine comment rather than mere courtesy, Leon curiously asked, May I ask where you've heard of my name? Ha. Miss Abigail from the Scorpio branch and I are relatively close relatives. I heard some things about the cleanup bureau from her. Abigail. Oh, the goat whip. Upon hearing a familiar name, Leon's expression instantly warmed further. Although this leader isn't a cleaner, it wouldn't hurt to connect with someone related to Abigail. After all, he aims to accumulate a set of goat products, relying on the whip in her possession. Knowing more acquaintances might aid this. On the other hand, the smiling, benevolent fat old man also seemed to harbor similar thoughts. Utilizing a shared acquaintance to draw closer, the Orleson Kingdom's Conservative Party leader immediately seized Leon, indulging in effusive praise, despite 10 out of 11 sentences being pointless, rapidly warming what was slightly cold earlier. Once the formal pleasantries among allies concluded, the self-proclaimed relative of Abigail seized the chance to tactfully inquire about the distribution of the Kralik Kingdom's inheritance. Let me handle this. Seeing Leon slightly troubled, surrounded by the Orleson Kingdom's envoys, Princess Veronica chuckled, took over, and started dealing with the pestering envoys. Relieved by Veronica's intervention, Leon quickly found an excuse, slipped out of the crowd, found a spot beside a pillar, sat down, and exhaled in relief. The way these envoys ingratiated themselves really made one's scalp tingle. He merely intended to familiarize himself and expand his network in the Orleson Kingdom, hoping it might come in handy in the future, but seeing their method of using networks, it's evident they immediately put them to use, climbing up smoothly. If Veronica hadn't smoothed out the situation, based on the atmosphere at the time, if he didn't leave something behind, escape might truly be difficult. These situations where you only talk but can't act really too unsuitable for me. I really can't do this. Surprised by the sound, Leon involuntarily glanced over to find the female cleaner having freed herself from a wave of envoys, now sitting on the opposite side of the pillar, wiping her eyes as she murmured to a small mirror. I've already said I wouldn't be an envoy. Harvey insisted. Uncle Grandpa, I want to go home. Uncle Grandpa? Upon hearing the conversation on the other side of the pillar, Leon, who originally intended to leave quietly, suddenly paused. He recalled that earlier, backstage, the female cleaner had mentioned the identity of her Uncle Grandpa. So, the person on the other end of this call is the current director of the Aquarius branch? Haha. If you miss home, just come back. Unaware that someone nearby was eavesdropping, Baltro, the director of the Aquarius branch, looked at his displeased grandniece on the other side of the celestial globe mirror, smiled gently and comforted her. You weren't originally from that side. Though you have the title of a princess, you spent more time with me than in the palace, and basically never dealt with any state affairs. It's normal not to handle these things well. Upon hearing her Uncle Grandpa's consolation, the dejected female cleaner felt a bit relieved. Unfortunately, when she thought of Leon standing beside the smiling Queen Veronica, chatting amicably with envoys from various countries before she sneaked away, the female cleaner couldn't help but whisper enviously. But he hasn't really dealt with much state affairs either, yet he does so well. The Aquarius director on the other side of the small mirror was slightly taken aback and then asked curiously, "Who is this he you mentioned? That future Aquarius director?" "Yes, it's him." After nodding slightly, the female cleaner sniffed and said somewhat glumly, "Leon is about the same age as me, and it seems he hasn't dealt with much state affairs either, but he does it so well, much better than I do. Earlier, I was surrounded and yelled at by a group of envoys. It wasn't actually yelling, just speaking to me loudly. But Leon's side was great. All the envoys seemed to like him. They were all around him, smiling warmly. Everyone was praising him. Oh, if only I could be like him." After hearing the envious hum of the female cleaner, Leon, who stayed a little longer out of curiosity after hearing his name mentioned, couldn't help but scratch the back of his head awkwardly. Although the envoys here are indeed praising me, everything looks harmonious. The situation on my side isn't actually what you imagine. Those envoys continuously praise me because they want something from Veronica. Faced with huge interests, even if I farted in public, I guess someone would analyze its lyricism and rhythm and call it a stupendous fart. Rather than being satisfied with my performance, it's more that they see me as a breakthrough point and want to gain favor from me, hoping to get a bigger share of the Kralik Kingdom heritage. Really? Then he's quite amazing. Unaware of the real situation at the banquet, the Aquarius director on the other end of the mirror, who extracted incorrect information from the female cleaner's one-sided statement, couldn't help but say admiringly, "I have seen the investigation records of that future Aquarius director. I remember that 4 months ago he was just an ordinary person living a difficult life, having no dealings with state affairs or anything of that sort. It's unexpected that after just a few months of training, he not only obtained strength comparable to the true god, but also managed to handle diplomatic situations with ease. Perhaps there really are geniuses in this world who are born knowing." "Stop praising me, stop it. Things aren't as you guys think. If you keep praising, I really won't be able to take it." "Uncle Grandpa." While Leon was feeling extremely embarrassed, the female cleaner on the other side of the pillar could also hardly endure any longer, tearfully accusing, "Aren't you supposed to comfort me now? Telling me I'm just younger and will be as amazing as Leon in the future? You, woo-woo. Ahahaha. Sorry. Looking at his grandniece pouting, the Aquarius director in the mirror couldn't help but apologize with a laugh, and then gently advised, "Melly, there aren't that many all-around geniuses in this world, and those as extraordinary as him might really be just one. There's no need for you to compare everything with him. Being yourself is already quite remarkable. I just feel a bit unwilling." Hearing this, the female cleaner visibly deflated, lying on the table holding the small mirror, whispering faintly with a hint of grievance, "I'm about the same age as him. We were both third-level cleaners. Our talents don't seem that far apart. At least we were both selected by the 5 palaces. We should both become directors in the future, but he seems to be better at everything than I am." "Oh, well, actually, there's not much of a difference." At this point, the director in the mirror waved a hand and said, "He's just a tad stronger than you, his tasks slightly harder, eliminating a few more true gods, a bit more mature in character, slightly more adept in state affairs, a tad higher in secret technique talent, and his future achievements stronger. Overall, it's just a tad more. Seeing his grandniece's eyes reddening again in the mirror, the Aquarius director hurriedly stopped his slicing-style summary and began to reassure her. You might indeed have quite a gap, but not everything here matters. Your identity is ultimately that of a cleaner. Whether you're good at handling state affairs or interacting with people is minor for you. The most crucial thing for you is to stand before all humanity during times of crisis, to protect and shield our species, ensuring the smooth continuation of the entire human race. At this point, the elderly blue-haired man in the mirror hesitated slightly, then looked at his niece, whose expression was somewhat bewildered, and spoke gently. Melly, your battlefield is not at the banquet, nor at the negotiation table or in the conference room. Like your mother, the front lines of humanity are where you truly belong. Like my mother. After murmuring this twice in her heart, the female cleaner slightly opened her mouth, then closed it again, speaking in almost a whisper. But my mother in the end also. Melly, although your mother didn't come back, her departure allowed many others to return alive. Her sacrifice was worthwhile. The Aquarius director in the mirror sighed, his expression a bit lonely. I understand you and Harvey have always had some resentment towards our decision. Harvey even didn't speak to me for 7 or 8 years. But Melly, there are many things in this world that someone must do. Moreover, you're not the only ones who've lost family. That future Aquarius director, like you, lost their parents at a young age. At the very least, you still have your father and me to take care of you. He didn't even have the right to grieve and had to immediately work hard to support his younger siblings. The reason he joined the cleanup bureau was that his sister was critically ill, and he had to volunteer himself. What? After hearing about Leon's past from her great-uncle, the female cleaner couldn't help but widen her eyes, saying with a sigh, Leon, did he really have such a tough life? He usually seems quite happy. Real pain is not something that is spoken of. The elderly blue-haired man in the mirror sighed. In any case, the reason he is more mature than you is that he had no choice but to mature. Although you have had some unfortunate experiences, you still have the right to innocence and even willfulness. If given a choice, he would probably want a complete family more than the maturity and talent you envy. Oh, right. As he said this, the Aquarius director seemed to think of something and instructed quite seriously. Melly, these things I've just told you, just keep it to yourself. Don't mention it to anyone else, especially not in front of that future Aquarius director. I won't. The female cleaner shook her head upon hearing this, then said with a face full of sympathy, It must have been difficult for Leon to escape his pain on his own. If I bring it up in front of him, it would definitely cause him discomfort. Not just discomfort. The Aquarius director, hearing this, said somewhat helplessly, The reason I told you not to bring it up is because of the cause of his parents' death. The investigation report mentioned that his parents, both engineers, died in that war 6 years ago. 6 years ago, in the war? Hearing what the Aquarius director said, the female cleaner couldn't help but be slightly stunned. Then her eyes widened suddenly. 6 years. Wasn't that? That was the last battle your father personally commanded before he could no longer move. So strictly speaking, the reason he lost his parents is closely related to what your father did back then. Seeing the female cleaner suddenly fall silent, her expression becoming extremely complex, the Aquarius director in the mirror sighed again, offering gentle solace. Melly, you don't need to bear any psychological burden. Your father was not a bad person. Particularly for the Northern Kingdom, he might be the best king in nearly 300 years. However, like your brother Harvey, his goodness was only meaningful to the citizens of the Northern Kingdom. To the people of other countries, your father was the most ambitious and ruthless king of the Northern Kingdom. The female cleaner involuntarily clenched her palm upon hearing this, then bit her lip and asked, Then my father, was he right or wrong? It's hard to say. The elderly blue-haired man in the mirror shook his head, then opened his mouth to ask in return, Melly, what do you think is right, and what is wrong? The female cleaner thought for a moment, then said somewhat dejectedly, "That war 6 years ago was an invasion. Then a lot of people on both sides died, even Leon's parents, so—" "My father. You think your father was wrong?" "Aha. But did you know? In that war 6 years ago, although he was the aggressor, before that, the entire Northern Kingdom had been suffering from implicit extortion all along." Recalling the situation back then, the Aquarius director explained, "Before your father fought that battle, the other side would use their geographic choke points and ice-free ports to periodically block the coal and food supplies to the Northern Kingdom, both of which are vital resources. Remember, one of the most excessive years saw coal prices in Rihi City rise almost 20-fold, causing countless people in various tribes to freeze or starve to death. Do you still think that battle shouldn't have been fought?" "Aye. In your father's own words, the safety of any country cannot be built on another country's insecurity. And as the king of the Northern Kingdom, when faced with such a good opportunity, he had no choice but to resolve this grave threat to his nation." After recounting a line from the female cleaner's father, the elderly blue-haired man in the mirror continued, "At that time, your father became ill from overwork, to the point where he could hardly eat anything, and as a fellow glutton bloodline inheritor, you should know what that means for you. Although your father didn't die on the battlefield, he chose to lead the army personally when he needed rest the most, which almost meant he was prepared to die on the border. Even later, when he was bedridden, it was still related to the war 6 years ago. To ensure that the Northern Kingdom wouldn't be strangled, he practically sacrificed his own life." After hearing about the situation 6 years ago, the anxious female cleaner couldn't help but mutter, "So, it wasn't father's fault? He was also forced? The real mistake lies with those who strangled us. I've said before about the war 6 years ago, it's really hard to determine who was right or wrong." The Aquarius director shook his head and said, "Your father's goal was just the pass and the ice-free port, but as the war escalated, the tribes that benefited invested more, eventually nearly destroying 2 counties of the opposing side. And have you thought about it? Why did the opposing side risk a war to repeatedly restrict our Northern Kingdom's supplies? Is it because of interests? Interests are just one aspect. Initially, the opposing side blocked the passes more to punish the atrocities of certain border tribes." The blue-haired elder in the mirror recalled, "Remember, when the opposing side hadn't severely limited the flow at the passes or blocked winter shipments yet, several large border tribes, dissatisfied with the material prices at the time, colluded with privateer ships of the Kingdom of Sao in multiple instances, raiding both sea and land massively. And strictly speaking, the Northern Kingdom was just a tribal alliance, much looser in structure compared to the opposing side. The king had lower control over the large tribes, so after several warnings without results, they naturally had to block the passes and ports, especially during winters prone to trouble, strictly limiting all material flows. However, as the time and frequency of blockades increased, a stable chain of interest gradually formed, driven by huge benefits, turning this preventive blockade into conscious exploitation and extortion, sowing the seeds for war. So, it all started because of us." After listening to her granduncle's recollection, the female cleaner, overwhelmed, said with a dazed look, "Was it our fault then? But if we didn't fight that war, wouldn't many people freeze and starve to death?" "Yes, that's why I said, about that war 6 years ago, it's hard to say who was right or wrong. Your father recklessly started the war. Indeed, it was unfair to the war's casualties, and to people like Leon's parents, but he did right by his own citizens. Even after 100 years, people of the Northern Kingdom will still remember him." After giving a summary that fell on both sides of the fence, looking at his grandniece in the mirror, whose eyes seemed a bit bewildered but seemed to understand something, the Aquarius director couldn't help but smile and warmly advised. The conversation veered a bit off topic. Uncle is getting old, always likes talking about the past. Anyway, remember not to mention anything about his parents, or the war 6 years ago, in front of the future Aquarius director. Although the future Aquarius director is incredibly talented, his actions have always been quite extreme and ruthless. If he bears a grudge, when he comes over for a task, he might just tear down our Rihi city on a whim. Hearing this, the female cleaner couldn't help but be startled and said somewhat frantically, "Will Leon do that?" "Haha, of course not." Looking at his grandniece in the mirror, who was no longer sad, the Aquarius director swimming in the underground river couldn't help but grin. "Don't worry, the future Aquarius director's emotions are actually quite stable. As long as you don't bring these matters up in front of him, he generally won't seek revenge intentionally." Melly, look to your left. Is there someone behind that pillar near you? I seem to have seen a piece of clothing flutter by. Did a corner of a dress just flutter? Hearing the reminder from the Aquarius branch chief, the female cleaner hesitated slightly, but she didn't immediately try to catch someone. Instead, she instinctively looked towards Queen Veronica. What made her heart tighten was that a figure who had just been happily conversing with the envoys had disappeared into the crowd, while Queen Veronica, amidst her exchanges with the envoys, intentionally or unintentionally kept glancing in this direction. Recalling the recent conversation, the female cleaner suddenly felt chills all over her body. Although it could be said that there were reasons, in a certain sense, her father was indeed the one responsible for the death of Leon's parents, making him an orphan. If Leon had heard this while hiding behind the pillar, she really didn't know how to face him. Listening to the hurried breaths behind the pillar, imagining the pained and angry expression on Leon's face and how his gaze would shift from warmth and closeness to coldness and distance when he looked at her in the future, the female cleaner's heart twisted. Knowing full well that the person should be behind the pillar, yet at the thought of what she was about to face, her feet seemed welded to the ground, unable to move an inch. Due to her exceedingly special identity and the early death of her mother and prolonged illness of her father, the female cleaner grew up under the care of her granduncle. Over these years, not to mention peers to play with, she didn't even meet many normal people. The people she interacted with the most were the maids and servants she encountered when entering and exiting the palace, or some officials and ministers. These people were respectful but never close to her. The rest were naturally the cleaners from the Aquarius branch, but those who had long endured the influence of abnormal objects, even if not paranoid or obstinate, often had some psychological issues. Even if they had the patience to humor the children for the Aquarius chief, they didn't know how to manage it. Leon, who from the beginning had intended to befriend her and was adept at entertaining children, was the first peer she had met over the years whom she could approach closely. Considering the similarities in their circumstances, comparable talents, both being level 3 cleaners, as well as reserve board members of the cleanup bureau, and even nearly being paired by the Pisces board member, Leon had gained a significant sense of acknowledgement in her heart and naturally occupied an important place. For someone whose romantic feelings had not yet awakened, whose interest in food far surpassed that in men, this feeling had nothing to do with love. However, it was naturally categorized into friendship, making him her first and only friend. For her, who had never had a peer playmate growing up, this new friend who suddenly intruded was undoubtedly invaluable, even capable of making her set aside a large slice of cake for her friend in the midst of happily indulging. Even if she couldn't resist and took a couple of bites on the way to find Leon, leaving the cake, initially the size of a watermelon, down to the size of a fist. However, to be able to restrain such a voracious appetite erupting from the depths of her soul during her gluttonous lineage's awakening and save 2 small slices of cake, sufficiently proved her regard for this friendship. It's just a pity. She feared she would lose this friend. In an instant, countless thoughts flooded her mind. Ultimately, a clear realization dawned on her that this rare friendship would inevitably drift away from her, and the female cleaner's eyes reddened instantly. But remembering from the Aquarius chief about Leon's painful experiences after the loss of his parents, her legs heavier than stone, finally moved with great effort little by little. Her mother had said, the more one dislikes facing something, the less one should choose to avoid it. Using the table for support and moving 2 steps, the resolute female cleaner bit her lip and stumbled quickly towards the column. Although there were reasons for the situation, ultimately it was her father who made him an orphan, so she should at least apologize. Even if she couldn't earn Leon's forgiveness, even if she would be hated by him from now on, with his gaze transforming from reluctant and disdain to hatred and dislike, she still had to, ugh. She really wanted to cry. Tears welling in her eyes, Summoning her courage, she turned behind the pillar recklessly, extending her arm abruptly to grab the evading Leon. Bowing deeply as tears brimmed her eyes, she apologized to that blurred figure. I'm sorry wa. Pida q. Han duck ding. Unable to hold back her tears, she leapt forward hugging him, burying her face in Leon's chest, smearing snot and tears between his inflated bosom, and sobbing sadly she said, I didn't know. Sob. Didn't know it would be like this. Sob, Leo wa. Can you please not hate me? You Why is your chest so big? I don't know why it's so big either. Feeling the bra soaked with tears, the female cleaner, who was embraced like a little bear with her waist tightly hugged by Layla, couldn't help nervously saying, Maybe because I liked milk when I was little? And I often ate bean cakes too. What? Eating bean cakes can enlarge? Wait, who are you? Squinting her eyes tightly to squeeze out the excess moisture, the female cleaner looked at the unfamiliar panicked woman in front of her. Startled, she asked, Where's Leon? Shouldn't Leon be behind the pillar? I don't know either. Bravely struggling timidly twice but unable to break free, the captured Miss Schwangpa, with her chest smeared with snot, could only respond tearfully. I'm a cleaner from the Virgin Branch. Everyone going to the northern border is gathered, and the chief asked me to notify Mr. Leon. Then I saw a silhouette here, which seemed a bit like him, so I came to check. But he wasn't here. This little miss, I really didn't mean to eavesdrop. Can you please let me go? Looking at the plainly dressed, panic-stricken woman in front of her, resembling a startled fawn, the female cleaner gradually released her arms, feeling slightly dazed. So, Leon wasn't behind the pillar? But this, glancing at Miss Zhuangpa's ample bosom, roughly estimating the magnitude, and recalling the face feel when she buried herself in it, the female cleaner couldn't help gritting her teeth, a strand of blue vein popping on her fair forehead. This woman about 9 times my size? Damn it! So she was the one behind the pillar all along? Leon wasn't here? Didn't hear what I said to granduncle either? Then why was I crying like this? Well, I promise I won't say anything about what just happened. Looking at the female cleaner, whose expression was uncertain, shifting between extreme embarrassment and relief, appearing both happy and sad, Miss Zhuangpa couldn't help but softly suggest, Miss, I really didn't mean to eavesdrop, and I didn't hear much. I just happened to stumble upon it. How about I compensate you a little money? No, that's not necessary. Upon hearing Miss Zhuangpa's suggestion, the female cleaner, snapping back to reality, shook her head, then reached out to grasp the hem of her skirt, staring at her nervously, and asked, You really didn't hear anything? No. Miss Zhuangpa hurriedly waved her hand and said, I only heard you and an elderly person talking about the port and the pass, because I was afraid you'd notice me. I blocked my ears and didn't hear anything after that. All right then. Nodding, still half in doubt, the female cleaner slightly moved aside, allowing the way, and just as Miss Zhuangpa hurriedly bowed her head to leave, she suddenly spoke. You're not going to tell anyone about my grandma, are you? Ah! Miss Zhuangpa was stunned by the words, then replied with wide eyes. Isn't it your father who started the war? Oh no! Liar! You said you didn't hear anything? Having casually tested, revealing the truth directly, the female cleaner was annoyed, stomped her foot, and once again reached out to grab Miss Zhuangpa. At this moment, a leisurely dog barking sounded. From the bowls and dishes on the table beside Miss Zhuangpa, a golden retriever's head suddenly poked out. In the female cleaner's surprised expression, that golden retriever slightly reached out and bit Miss Zhuangpa's skirt hem, gently tugged, and pulled her into the bowls and dishes that were smooth like mirrors, and after a shake or two, they disappeared. Now it's over. Watching Miss Zhuangpa being dragged into the bowls and dishes by the dog, the female cleaner couldn't help but feel a bit helplessly angry. This woman is also a cleaner from the Virgin Branch. After she runs away, she'll certainly go to Leon to tell what she heard. Although I can also go to Leon first to confess, The crying I just did dispelled all the courage I had mustered. How could I even start to speak? With a head full of sorrow, she circled back to the other side of the pillar, put away the small mirror that had gone dim at some point, and left this sad place dejectedly, starting the search for Leon's location. And after she walked away, a subtle scraping sound suddenly arose beside the bowl and dishes where Miss Zhuangpa vanished. Accompanied by the sound of a tail swishing against the chair back, Leon's figure appeared on the chair beside the bowls and dishes. Judging by the position, if the female cleaner had just moved her hand an inch to the side, she might have grabbed his shoulder. Lila is truly... Her performance with Miss Zhuangpa is consistently reliable. Plucking the secret tail from his rear and throwing it back into the mirror world, Leon, recalling what he had just heard, couldn't help but shake his head slightly with a complex expression. The director of the Aquarius branch, Baltro, was right. The war 6 years ago is really hard to judge who was right or wrong. Even for the kingdom, which was invaded, it's hard to say they were absolutely innocent. To many, this extremely brutal and painful war was the complete opposite for him. After all, if not for that war, Anna wouldn't have created the abnormal object, and he wouldn't exist. In a certain sense, he even had to thank the war. Its impact brought him a warm family, gave him a gentle and understanding younger sister, and most importantly, granted him a source of emotional solace. However, for Anna, who almost lost everything, this topic was somewhat too cruel. With a slight pang of heartache, he sighed. Watching the female cleaner's distant back, Leon couldn't help but feel some sympathy. Indeed, most people who join the cleanup bureau seem to have some less-than-ideal experiences. Even if Melly appears carefree, she too harbors some painful past she doesn't wish to remember. Based on what he heard, her mother was also a cleaner from the Aquarius branch, but she sacrificed herself during a cleaning operation. Seemingly, even when she could have retreated, she chose to sacrifice herself to save more people. Although he doesn't know the specifics about the mission, it should have been assigned by Director Baltro of the Aquarius branch, which indirectly caused the death of the female cleaner's mother, leaving her and her brother without a mother. So the current king of the Northern Kingdom likely deeply resents this decision by his great-uncle, having not spoken a word to him for many years, also possibly harboring a hard attitude towards Melly, who was brought up by her great-uncle and destined to become a cleaner in the future. With a guilty great-uncle burdened with many affairs, a mother sacrificed early because of a mission, a father busy with state affairs and bedridden long-term, the remaining ambitious brother, even if he slightly improves his attitude towards her later, would likely be too preoccupied with state affairs to take care of her. With this in mind, though she likely didn't worry about food and clothing, her life probably wasn't too pleasant. A child about the same age as Melanie, with little affection from family, soaking in the cleanup bureau full of strange people, growing into how she is today, is already quite remarkable. Or although she may not have had a good life, her happiness at times was genuine. Watching the female cleaner mid-search for him unconsciously heading towards the serving station, Leon couldn't help but chuckle, then knuckled his finger joints, softly tapping on the bowls and dishes on the table. Lila, I already saw you. Come out now. Woof! With a familiar dog bark, the golden retriever flashed across the bowl, banging out a startled Miss Zhuangpa, but only her head. Goodness, this scene is truly a bit horrifying. Watching Miss Zhuangpa's head in the dinner plate, Leon's mouth twitched, hurriedly shifting the vase on the table over to shield the head from frightening others. Then he asked, Lila, did the director send you to find me? Besides telling me everyone's gathered, is there anything else? Yes. Twisting her head on the plate, finding the female cleaner not nearby, Miss Zhuangpa let out a sigh of relief, then proceeded to convey. Director Olivia asked me to inform you that the General Bureau discovered some clues, suspecting that beneath Rihe City, deep in the underground river, there might be a lava tunnel extending to the Earth's core. And given the Bureau's limited means for investigating the Earth's core, it's difficult to monitor the specific situation there. So the General Bureau's idea is to have you set off a bit earlier to collaborate with Baltro, director of the Aquarius branch, in thoroughly inspecting Rihe City's underground, while guarding against the Slaughter King Association, and promptly addressing the hidden dangers in the underground river of Rihe City. Do you hope I can set out quickly and assist the female cleaner's great-uncle to clear away the underground hot river hazards? After listening to Miss Zhuangpa's recount, Leon subconsciously frowned. Being urged by the Bureau to leave hastily indicates that there is indeed a significant issue in the Northern Kingdom. According to the red-haired director's personality, she would block such a request for me unless it was truly necessary. Since she chose to follow the Bureau's instructions and sent Layla to find me, it proves her view aligns with the Bureau, believing it is necessary for me to depart promptly. But, after glancing in Queen Veronica's direction and noticing the arm veil, a part of the wedding dress not yet fully removed from her arm, Leon couldn't help but hesitate. Although the wedding ceremony had ended, the banquet had just begun, and there were still many procedures arranged. Leaving now felt a bit, seemingly sensing Leon's hesitative gaze. Queen Veronica happened to look over as he hesitantly glanced her way, noticing the hesitation and wavering in Leon's eyes. After a slight pause, she turned back to apologize to the delegates of various countries, then lifted her skirt and swiftly walked towards Leon's corner under the puzzled gazes of the delegates. "What's the matter?" Seeing Leon's hesitant look and the rather terrifying head in the dish, Queen Veronica blinked and somewhat knowingly asked, "Is it the cleanup bureau? Leon, do you have work again?" Leon nodded slightly. "There's been a change in the situation in the Northern Kingdom. It needs urgent attention." Pausing slightly as he spoke, he gazed into Queen Veronica's regret-filled eyes and said through gritted teeth, "Veronica, I'm sorry, I might have to." "Go ahead." Interrupting Leon's apology, Queen Veronica smiled gently. Although her beautiful eyes still held a tint of regret, she reached out to adjust Leon's tie, gently comforting. "No need to feel guilty. I might not understand the cleanup bureau's matters, but I understand you. If you're choosing to speak up at this moment, it proves the choice you're making is the right one, and it's also very urgent. If it's the right thing, then go ahead and do it, but be sure to stay safe. Don't forget someone's waiting for you." "I will." Seeing Queen Veronica expressing understanding, Leon couldn't help but exhale deeply in relief. Then, with a face of regret, said, "Veronica, if I could just—" "All right, there's no need to say such things now." Queen Veronica shook her head, then lifted her fair left hand, waggling the ring on her ring finger before Leon with a sweet expression. "It's just missing some ceremonies. I've already obtained what I wanted most. Compared to that, the rest is insignificant. Missing a few procedures doesn't matter. But there's one thing you must promise me." "Huh? What's that?" Faced with Leon's puzzled inquiry, Queen Veronica didn't immediately answer but tilted her head slightly, looking at the female cleaner in the distance whose small face was full of hesitation, seemingly wanting to come over but not daring to, then turned back, looking at Leon with a teasing smile and asked, "She's coming with you this time too, right? Melly?" Following Queen Veronica's gaze towards the female cleaner's direction, Leon suddenly realized, then somewhat speechlessly said, "You don't think that there's something between her and me, do you? If I really thought there was something between you two, I wouldn't have this attitude." Unable to resist pinching Leon, Queen Veronica rolled her eyes at him and said, "Just before the wedding started, when she went backstage to find you, it really gave me a scare. Do you know how worried I was at that time?" After contemplating slightly, Leon suddenly realized that he was somewhat at fault in this matter and awkwardly scratched his head, hastily explaining, "This isn't what you think. Melly, she didn't intend to stay long. Just wanted to ask about the Northern Kingdom affairs. Later, I got curious about the 12 royal bloodlines and chatted with her a bit more, but there's nothing between us." "I know." After giving Leon a playful glare, Queen Veronica glanced again at the female cleaner in the distance, then said with a hint of jealousy and a laugh, "Before seeing her in person, I was indeed very worried, fearing she might have thoughts about you, intending to ruin our wedding, but after the ceremony started, I deliberately looked at her one more time. After that, I wasn't that concerned anymore." Just one look and she was no longer worried? Upon hearing these words, Leon was momentarily stunned, then immediately understood what Queen Veronica meant. What Veronica implied wasn't about the female cleaner's excessive sorrow, but rather her overly unique pure temperament, or more bluntly, an almost childishly clear naivety. The female cleaner isn't stupid, but perhaps being raised by Director Aquarius made the people and matters she encountered very unique. Hence, even Melly could outwit her 10 times over in terms of shrewdness. In short, her thoughts are too innocent. She likely doesn't have those ideas towards you. Seeing Leon's struggling expression, Queen Veronica couldn't help but chuckle lightly, then humorously continued. You know what? When I walked through the gallery, she, except for the initial glance at me, spent the rest stealthily moving to the outermost edge of the guest seating. And during the part where we exchanged rings, she took advantage of nobody noticing to slip into the alcove beside the guest area, attempting to sneak some cakes placed there. But that alcove is a memorial area, and the cakes in there are imitation decorations. She couldn't bite into them and got so frustrated that she was stomping her feet beside the table. Gosh, that's embarrassing. Hearing Veronica describe the scene, Leon, who was solely focused on Veronica during the ceremony and not paying attention to the floor below, couldn't help but cover his face, genuinely feeling embarrassed for the female cleaner. And after recounting what she saw, Queen Veronica looked at Leon, whose face was red with embarrassment, and smilingly concluded. The Princess Melisandre is of the same age as you, but she gives the impression of still being a child, and a particularly gluttonous one at that. Before the ceremony started, she looked at me many more times than at the cakes, at least 5 or 6 times more, so after realizing that, I knew I was overthinking it. Yes, exactly. That's it. Upon hearing this, Leon couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief once again. Then, with a relaxed expression, added, That's why I didn't think much. It's great you could figure that out. Bah! Hearing Leon's words, Queen Veronica couldn't help but spit lightly at him, then pinched his side ribs with a hint of annoyance, saying, I might have figured it out, but that doesn't mean I won't be angry. This is our wedding, the most important day of my life. Even if she likely didn't have the intention, you dared to feed another woman at our wedding. How do you plan to explain this? Looking at Veronica in front, one hand on her hip, eyes indeed laced with annoyance. Leon couldn't help but recall the previous scene and hurriedly explained. Because of her gluttony bloodline issue, the situation is rather special. If her appetite isn't satisfied, even her soul might be affected. So, she ate too much and hadn't digested it. I managed to get some leftover cake mix from someone. There were no other utensils around. Then I didn't think much, just handed over a piece, and you happened to see it. All right then. After hearing Leon's explanation, Queen Veronica snorted and then nodded slightly, saying, Since it's a special situation, I'll let it pass this time. But such things won't happen again next time. Next time? How many weddings do you plan on having? No. There won't be a next time. Definitely not. Finally having coaxed Princess Veronica, Leon heaved a sigh of relief and couldn't help but mutter internally. Taking advantage of the situation to playfully quarrel a bit, to enjoy being carefully soothed seems to be a natural skill for most women. Even rational and calm Veronica couldn't escape this when it came to this point. Why are you silent? Darling, what are you thinking about? Nothing. Hearing this, Leon immediately put on a serious expression, simultaneously unlocking the innate skill of married men to sweet talk, and sincerely said, I was thinking about you, you're so understanding. If it were someone else, they might have thrown a big fit right then and there. I'm so lucky to have the opportunity to explain to you, to marry such a clever wife. I'm truly fortunate. That's not necessarily true. Looking at Leon's flawless expression, Princess Veronica couldn't help but smile faintly and said, Having a clever wife might not always be a good thing for you. For instance, if you truly wronged me, the consequences would be very, very serious. Queen Veronica smiled and said, As soon as you leave, I'll immediately invest in Melanie's business, becoming her major shareholder, and then take William to see the Mech. granting him free access to the royal library and certain administrative halls. Day! Seeing Leon's eyes suddenly widen, seemingly understanding something, Queen Veronica laughed and continued. Besides, Anna seems very interested in the new Poverty Relief Institute being rebuilt behind your apartment, and she's a kind child, truly suitable for this. If she's interested, I'll help her find a qualified teacher, assign some competent assistants, and directly entrust the new institute to her, gradually expanding it to become the largest public welfare department in the royal capital. Hearing this, Leon blinked and then said with a stiff upper lip, "Isn't this a good thing?" "Yes, under normal circumstances it is." Lightly gripping Leon's hand, Queen Veronica rubbed the ring on his hand and leaned her head against his chest, smiling. "But if it meets a special situation, such as their brother doing something that wrongs their sister-in-law, well, then whose side your family siblings will take isn't very clear." Hiss! Imagining the scene Queen Veronica described, Leon couldn't help but take a sharp breath, feeling as if his metaphorical lifeline was being grabbed tightly. If something similar really happened, even if Anna and the others wouldn't actually disown their brother, in face of a sister-in-law who gave her strong career support and was wronged, his original family status might immediately drop to the level of a younger brother. His position as the elder brother would be lost instantly. A truly terrifying woman, grasping my lifeline right off the bat. No wonder those envoys always seemed so apprehensive when talking to her. "All right, look at how frightened you are." Looking up at Leon's serious face, Queen Veronica couldn't help but giggle, then slightly tiptoed to peck the corner of his mouth. "I was just joking, you wouldn't really do anything to wrong me. There's no need to worry about such things." Got it, even though Veronica says she doesn't mind, she's actually a bit angry. She's probably saying this to get back at me for earlier feeding Melly the cake. It's not revenge. Seeing through Leon's thoughts at a glance, Queen Veronica said with a smile, "It's just a reminder. I believe you didn't have any other thoughts before. It's just that when you found out that Princess Melisand's soul had a problem, you got worried and thought less. Now that I've reminded you once, next time you encounter a similar situation, you can think a bit more, right?" "Yes, absolutely. Because if I don't think things through, I might turn back to find my family has disappeared." Having tried a hand at intricate diplomatic skills, managing to teach her husband like administering a grand nation, Veronica didn't dwell further on the cake incident but instead asked if she could help with anything, reminding him twice more to be safe. Then she actively let go of Leon's hand and gently said, "Go tend to your affairs. I have things I need to do too." After nodding in response, looking at her reluctant eyes, Leon thought and then reminded, "Oh, didn't you say you wanted me to promise you something?" Right, there was such a thing, but now it shouldn't be necessary." Hearing this, Queen Veronica nodded and explained with a light laugh, "What I wanted you to promise was to keep a little distance when interacting with Princess Melisande, just to avoid any accidental incidents." Geez, still thinking about that? Upon hearing this, Leon blinked and raised his hand, swearing with a helpless expression, "Didn't we already talk this through? In my eyes, she's just a kid like Melanie. I truly have no such intentions." "I know, I believe you," Princess Veronica softly said. "But even if you don't have any feelings, Princess Melisande merely sees you as a playmate for now. But what if her thoughts change in the future and she becomes romantically interested in you?" Leon couldn't help but laugh at her words. "I'm not Gold Wheel. No way would someone easily fall for me. She'd probably be more interested in braised pork knuckles than me." "That's not necessarily the case." Holding Leon's cheek with admiration, Princess Veronica laughed. "The man I chose is the best. Any woman with a sensible eye could never overlook you. You're exaggerating too much." After lightly stroking Leon's cheek and making a couple more teasing comments, Princess Veronica withdrew her hand and thoughtfully said, "Although this condition isn't necessary anymore, it's a bit wasteful since you agreed to do something for me. How about this?" Hitting her palm lightly with her fist, Princess Veronica looked up at Leon and with a smile asked, "Because of the strained relations, I haven't been to the Northern Kingdom. Leon, while you're on your way back, can you bring me some specialties from Rihi City?